call the meeting to order. Welcome to the regular board meeting of that Irrigation District, May 26th, 2021. Was it the 28th? Let's say on here. Anyway.
26th. It is the 26th.
Okay.
Is it 20? No, it says 26th.
It's right there.
Oh.
Anyway, look, join me with a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Division 1.
Here?
Division 2.
Here.
And we are working on your tablet. Division 3. Here. Division 4. Here. Division 5.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. At this time, we'll take public comment on any items not on today's agenda. If you would like to speak to anything concerning NID, now's your time to start on your phone, please.
Tracy Sheehan.
Okay, Tracy Sheehan, go ahead.
Good morning, Board. Tracy, Hills Water Network. My comment this morning has to do with the Urban Water Management Plan, and in particular, the public process. My understanding right now is that this is how the public process is going to roll out, is that next week on the 2nd, the draft plan will be released. And then 3 weeks later, the public will have a chance to, well, it'll be the first time that there'll be actually a public meeting. The board will be presented with the plan on the 23rd. And then the next day on the 24th, there'll be a public meeting. And then I'm not sure when, but a week later or 2 weeks later, comments will be due. So I have a suggestion, and the interest here is to make sure that the public can, best understand what's contained in that plan. So my suggestion is, rather than waiting till the 23rd to have the board actually understand the plan and ask questions, is to actually move that up maybe to your first board meeting in June, which I think is the 9th. So instead of waiting for the 23rd and 24th to kind of have like a double meeting in 2 days in a row, is move one of those meetings up, and that will let the board have a chance to ask questions, and the public can have a chance to ask clarifying questions. And then you have 2 more weeks to then have a meeting to get public comment that's more well-informed on the content of the plan. So when you're thinking about this public process, I'd ask you to consider that change. I think it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment on items not on today's agenda?
No other hands are raised.
Other hands, okay. Last chance, if you'd like to comment today, items not on the agenda, starting on your phone. Seeing none, we'll proceed with the agenda. Thank you. At this time, I'd just like to make a little comment to the board. In light of our heavy agendas we've had and the time it takes to have these meetings, we're either going to have another meeting, a third meeting per month, or my first suggestion is to limit comments that are informational or not directly affect the vote. Okay, and those comments specifically directed towards finance and those kind of questions, the staff would be happy to answer. Okay, they don't necessarily change the vote. So my request is that we limit our comments and see if we can streamline our process a little bit. And we will continue monitoring this, because we don't want more marathon meetings like we have to go till 6 p.m. So that's my request. With that, we will.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead. Yes.
Is this are you setting that practice as a board chairman,
Yes,
or
ma'am.
do we have a dialogue about that?
I'm setting that as a request from the board chairman for items that are not, I mean, ongoing education is necessary, I get it. The time consumption for the rest of the board at that time for those kind of items that don't materially change the vote. For instance, in my tenure here, we have never, a consent agenda has never changed. An item has never materially changed by having discussion about it. So those things, specifically consent agenda and other informational, when we have a receive and file, let the staff present it. If you have questions, that would streamline for me, because I think for me, we're spending a lot of time on that stuff that doesn't change the outcome of the vote. So.
I respectfully disagree.
Okay.
I think I have to respectfully disagree too. And my reason is that often there are things on consent. For instance, today's Tektronix thing was on the consent agenda, and I had all kinds of questions about it. And I sent an email to Chip and asked a bunch of questions, and as this was, right when we first got the agenda, and had he not been able to respond or whatever, anyway, the response was, oh gosh, those are good questions, we got to pull this item. Well, had it gone forward, I would have had the same questions. And I think it would have made a material difference in how I saw that item. So I'm sorry, Chris, but I do respect as well.
Well, and my point about that one, just like we've streamlined, I think we've streamlined the warrants, for instance, by asking questions beforehand. We do have the information. We can have, questions beforehand. So it's a request to try to streamline the process. And if it be the will of the board, we will be having to consider a third meeting per month since our new model of not having committee meetings. So that's,
well, I would prefer a third meeting rather than cut out dialogue, because that's where the dialogue is where we become better informed, and oftentimes things do actually change. So that's my position. I prefer a third meeting.
yes.
And as noted in our item 6 today, the grand jury, the board has to be informed. We have to understand. We should be making these decisions. And we can't just rubber stamp it. If we don't understand it, we have to have a dialogue about it.
I don't disagree with that one. Those kinds of things, including the one we're doing today. Okay.
We can't ask questions. I'm just...
No, I'm not saying we can't ask questions. I'm asking to consider the time frame for, is it a personal interest, like, for instance, the size of the pipe, okay? If that's that does not materially change our vote approving a project when the staff has already done the job. So that's what's precipitating this request of mine, that we ask those questions of the staff who are more than willing to do that, and try to because oftentimes I do not need to know the answer to that question to make my vote today, and to spend an amount of time doing this is unreasonable to me. That's why I'm ahead.
I'd like to propose that we do have a separate meeting every month, have a workshop, one day a month, one particular Tuesday, any Tuesday, have a workshop where we can have interested dialogue, because I noticed, there's a lot of questions on the capital improvement plan and the projects and the reports. It's not just a report out. These are replacing committee meetings, which were for open dialogue to encounter with our people. So I would like to propose that we do start putting a third meeting. This was a trial run to see how it works.
Right.
It's adaptive management. I'm all for saying, let's meet a third day of the month, make it a workshop, just like the committee days, and all the committees, and meet that third day. I think that's a much better solution.
All right. Any other comment? Thank you. All right, consent agenda. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Oh, first off.
No, Mr. Chairman, we would like to pull item number 2 from the consent agenda, and we will revisit item number 2 at a different board meeting. So we want to pull it completely off of today's agenda.
Okay, so all we have is item number 1 on the consent agenda.
That's correct.
And are we skipping informational items? We can't ask a question on that?
I skipped them.
Okay.
Not on purpose.
Okay.
So
We certainly can answer questions.
yes. We'll go back to the informational items at this time. Who's up first? That'd be,
Well, I again very much appreciate the effort of the staff's presentation of this information and find it very valuable. I do have a few questions. On the Water Operations Department report, it talks about setting up tailwater gauges and installing LWW measuring meters, and I just wondered if we could hear a little bit more about that.
Chip, are you on the phone or in the room?
There's no page number.
That would help too.
we just have to find water ops.
There's a cover page.
For water off. Right. You see Chip coming on?
I see him, but he's probably walking down.
He's probably on his way down. So just, let's give it 1 second.
Okay.
Where does that talk about? Oh, there it is, under electrical.
Water resources.
Come in, Chip, we have a question for you.
There's your lighting.
Heard, I couldn't turn down the hall fast enough.
Are you in Water Operations Department?
It says Water Operations Department Activities Report,
Oh.
Water Resources.
That first page.
Yeah, And, Chip, it talks about setting up tailwater gauges and then installing LWW measuring weirs, and I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Sure, yes. Good morning, board, staff, public. Chip Close, Water Operations Manager. The items that you referenced, if you reflect back when we had our ag water management plan, we talked about the lack of measuring stations on the canals or the limitations on the measuring stations. Well, staff has gone out there and researched some very simple electronic gauging devices that we can put on these tail ends of the canals and start monitoring how much is leaving the ends of the canal. And that's what we are actively working on. We started putting those in numerous canals to get a better gauge on how much water, which is very important to me here. So that's what that's about.
How is it recorded and transmitted back to the headquarters?
Well, we have multiple different styles. So we have some that use solar power and a battery, and they electronically, through a pressure transducer that goes down into the water, measures the elevation above it, records that on a data logger, and then also sends a signal cellularly back to the district when we can monitor it real time. Others, when they're very remote, mainly those tailwater canals are very remote, and we have a data logger on site that records the information, and our staff goes out, downloads the information, and brings it back to the office.
Okay, thank you.
So multiple scenarios. And then the Lake Wildwood, that's what LWW stands for, is the installation of the weirs for their water delivery for the summer season.
Okay, thank you. And then on the next page, it talks about conservation compared to 2013. So is 2013 then the baseline? So when you look at 2019, 20% more water was conserved over 2013 levels? Is that how you interpret that?
Yeah, so during the last drought, the 2012 through 2016 drought, the State Water Resources Control Board designated 2013 as the baseline year and did comparisons every year thereafter based on that.
Okay.
And so yes, that's what this graph does, is compares every year since then to 2013. That is the year in which you were designated to start conserving. For us, it was 30% during the peak of the drought. We had to conserve 36% more than we did in 2013. So,
Director Hull, I either heard you wrong or you misspoke. The 2019 was a conserved 20%, so below 2013 consumption. And then April is above
Right.
2013.
Yeah, I just was clarifying where the baseline year was. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then on the raw water sales changes in miners inches.
Yes.
So this is interesting to me that the sales are going up. The previous page shows the sales going up, but then so maybe I don't understand the difference between, well, that's new sales,
Correct.
but overall, sales are going down in raw water, is that correct?
So, overall, when you compare both, the sales are still going up. But what you're seeing is that new raw water sales, brand new customers essentially, are increasing. The next page is raw water sales changes. These are existing customers that are reducing their allotment essentially.
Okay.
And we are seeing that existing customers are cutting back, at least some.
Okay, all right, and so you need to really look at both of those charts to see.
Right, and
the
I
total.
figured if I just combined them and gave you them as one number, it wouldn't tell the whole story.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right. That is the end of my questions.
Okay, Director Peters.
I have a quick follow-up on the tailwater stages. Do we have gates on those tail ends of those canals? Are there gates? Do we close a gate, or how do we stop it from leaving? It's other than just minimizing the amount that leaves.
Well, we can't stop it because it is a gravity system. It's always flowing. But generally speaking, what we have at the end of a canal is a weir.
Yeah.
A V-notch weir or something similar to that backs the water up a little bit so that we can measure the elevation and how much is going over that weir. It tells us how much is leaving the system.
Okay.
And so it's controlled at the top end is the only way to limit the outflow.
That's correct, and that's one of the challenges with our system. Being 500 miles of canal, it's hard to be real-time with demand.
Yeah.
So we do the best we can.
And as far as the top end of the system, do we have any automatic gates where you can control them from headquarters?
Yes, absolutely. Not very many. It's very expensive to do, but we do have some on our larger systems, like the brand new Cascade, Banner Cascade pipeline. It's all fully automated.
Right.
We can adjust real time.
I highly encourage it, and hopefully we have the capacity to really put together some proposals, because with this funding that's available, especially going into the drought, I think it's a perfect opportunity to get more of these canals automated.
Yeah.
The struggle we run into is that most canals rely on a canal above them for supply. And so the automation of gates, you can't automate the lower gates before automating the upper gates, right? They all have to sing in tune, essentially.
Sure.
And so that's going to be one of the challenges. It's a lot of infrastructure to put in at a high cost, but if we can get grant funding for it, great.
Start with the upper gates. Let's get all the upper gates done, and then we'll worry about going down. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chip. Director Johansson.
Yeah, under the 2018 Farm Bill, they have allowed districts such as NID to qualify for EQIP programs. And Brandy Murphy, who's the irrigation specialist for NRCS, has determined that NID does qualify, and that conservation practices and automated monitoring systems qualify. What we need to do is just follow up and see what other projects we have, present that to her. She's in the local office for about another 100 days, but otherwise she's out of Colusa. And NRCS money could be available.
Would you explain for board members who may not know what EQIP, how it works?
EQIP. Yeah, so far it's been a program that Natural Resource Conservation Service, the financial arm of USDA, has been able to help farmers put irrigation systems in, conservation systems, catch ponds, efficiency on the irrigation system, moving from flood irrigation to maybe impact sprinklers, then to micro sprinklers, then to drip irrigation, just more efficient use of water. And they seem since 2018, there's more money available, and the programs have been expanded. So her number is 272-3417, extension 3.
So thanks, Rick, for that. I was introduced to her at the Nevada County Ag Commission meeting, so we'll have to reach out to her.
What?
Dan Macon's reading.
Okay, so it is important to note, and the reason I tagged in was that it is a cost share program. It's 50-50, right?
It has been 50-50.
So it's not government giveaway.
I would check the current status.
It's worth looking into.
For sure.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Ruth.
Thanks,
Okay,
Rich.
and we have a hand raised,
It's lowered now.
it's lowered down.
Might want me to point out that caution.
Dan Macon, if you're still hearing and you want to chime in on that subject, go ahead.
I was just going to add that it is a cost share program. It's not a grant program. And the cost share rate will depend on how they qualify the district. It's not necessarily a 50-50 cost share match.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. All right, go ahead, Director Holt.
I have a question for Kian under the hydro area,
Thank you,
and
Chip.
Thanks, Chip.
thank you, Chip. For under report, generation report, it really shows the dramatic decrease in the current generation versus the average. And you note that this is due to the very dry conditions we've had. And so I'm wondering how you anticipate these dry conditions affecting our overall revenue for hydro, if at all, you know, as you look at the year going forward.
Morning, Ken.
Morning.
Welcome. Morning.
I just appeared.
Yeah, that's right.
Kean Summers, hydroelectric manager. On the larger powerhouses, the Yuba Bear powerhouses, the revenue is availability based, so it won't be dramatically impacted by the drier year. So that's Bowman, Chicago Park, Dutch Flat number 2, and Rawlins, which is the bulk of our generation. At the Combi South and Combi North powerhouses, it'll have, and Scotts Flat, it'll have a different effect. Combi South, it's going to dramatically affect the revenue out of that powerhouse. We're probably done generating for the year. We'll wait to see where the final numbers come in, but it will be below the budget. Combi North and Scotts Flat tend to be more driven by irrigation water. So if customer demand drops and the water through those drop, the revenue there will drop accordingly.
So do you have a sense of from what was budgeted for your revenue? Do you feel like it's still pretty close?
I believe so, because the bulk of that revenue is out of the Yuba Bear plants.
Yeah.
You know, and those are well on track. You can see in the next slide that we're actually 100% available, and
Right.
we're budgeted in the low 90s. So we're actually ahead of budget there, and I think we're pretty close, if not slightly ahead of budget overall throughout the department.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Director Peters.
Are you done, Karen?
Yeah, thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
How's the South Sutter operation going? Is that a done deal, or what's the status of it?
No, so I added a slide for that. It does say we're in negotiations with them, giving them the draft contract. We haven't heard anything back from them yet, so the ball is entirely in their court, so.
Okay. And a few years ago, you had mentioned you were working on a business plan that was going to be doing cost-benefit analysis of all the facilities and trying to figure out how we can better strategize spending and expenses. How's that coming along?
So slowly, we've been trying to review the smaller powerhouses, the Combi South, Combi North, and Scotts Flat, because I know there's concern about profitability out of those specifically. That's been put on hold out of the finance side of the house as they've worked through the audits and the ERP, and so it's moving slowly.
Okay, it's been a few years, and so yeah.
Do you have a sense of when the report or analysis would be completed?
Well, we've had some discussions, Kian and I, and over the period of time,
Uh-huh. How are we now?
Hear it now, Chip?
Good?
We're good.
Okay,
All right, they've all lowered their hands. We'll
Well,
be back in
okay?
action.
we're back in business.
Kean, will you repeat the last 30 seconds that you said?
Yes, we
The
were
difference
talking about
between the two plans.
Difference.
It was actually
updating
Greg
for-
who was
for a
talking.
business plan, both for small hydro and for,
Yeah.
for their,
FERC, and he saw those as two different.
Right.
Yeah.
So to repeat, not knowing where I got cut off, I see those as two different items. So there is the staffing plan for the new FERC license, and then there is the more business plan driven for the smaller powerhouses, the Scotts Flat, Combe North, and Combe South.
I have a follow-up question on that. You had mentioned that Scotts Flat, that Combe South is pretty much run of the river, that you're not operating it anymore this year. What about Combe North and Scotts Flat? Are those two still operating it? And then my follow-up question is, do we ever release water only for hydro generation? Do we ever not use it for irrigation or for further water supply to keep our revenues up?
So the first part of your question, Combe North and Scotts Flat are driven by irrigation demand generally. So yes, they are both online right now, and they're both generating and producing revenue. The second part of the question there regarding do we ever release water just to generate hydro? And the answer there is only if it's spilling. So in years when there's excess water in the system, we will use every drop of that we can and try and run it through a generator. This year, there was none, so,
Okay,
yeah.
so there's never any just for hydro generation. It's always for water.
It's driven either by water demand or excess in the system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you.
okay, other questions for Ken? Okay,
Questions about engineering?
okay,
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Doug, you have a question about the engineering report?
I do.
Okay, Doug? Roderick?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good morning, Doug. This is Laura. Hi, I have a couple questions about the engineering. Looking at this Maven Canal, we're into phase 4 of it, and it says it's in Division 1, but I don't think it's in Division 1, but that's minor. I think it's in Division 3 if I'm thinking about the same project. Does this canal go all the way up to Division 1?
Yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head. I'd have to go back and look to confirm that. But we can confirm that if it is or isn't. I can't.
Okay, and then I was wondering, what is this has been a very long ongoing, where, like I said, we're in phase 4, and it says rehabilitate and enlarge the canal, but all the rest of it is and so I just like to, and there's not information on the website, so my main thing is if we could get information on the website for these projects, if we want to go back and look at the history of them and see the feasibility study, or see why we're doing this project. What's the problem we're solving by doing this? It doesn't look like there's very many parcels down there where the work is. And looking at it before it was putting the canal in a pipe, and so I just have questions about that. So I'd like to follow up with you offline about that. But
Okay.
but it would be helpful if we got these projects that are on the list that have been ongoing for some time, if we could get those projects up on the website so we can research them. That'd be helpful. And then on the Hemp Hill project, did we get substantial, can you give us a brief update on the comments that came in on the DEIR for the Hemp Hill project?
So I haven't seen all the specific comments. We did receive 5. We received some from Foothills Water Network, NOAA, Placer County, California Water Audit, and then I believe SARSIS from, I can't think of the individual's name off the top of my head. So we have received those. The couple that I did see, I haven't reviewed them all. All were supportive of the alternative that the document is identifying as a superior alternative. So we'll be bringing that obviously to the board here, hopefully in July, for a hearing to have that discussion. Most of the comments, or it seems like a lot of the comments in talking with Tanya, is related more to the design component of it and how the alternative is going to be designed and implemented, and not so much impacts or deficiencies in the document itself. I think the one Noah talked about some issues with the sediment, so we're gonna have to take a look at that and include that in the final document we bring to you guys.
Oh, good, well, that's encouraging, I'm happy to hear that. Okay, and then on the Loma Rica District Funded Water Line Extension, it said we received funding agreements. Did we receive 50% plus one, or how's that? I mean, did we receive all of them to move forward with the project, or have we got all 50% of those funding agreements?
I believe we do. The part of the thing we're dealing with now is that we do have to obtain a couple of easements. And if you're not familiar with our policy, does not allow for eminent domain to happen on projects like this. And so before we would do anything and bring it to the board, we want to make sure that we have acquired or at least have an agreement with those 2 or 3 folks because they're the first part of the project. And so if we don't get those easements, we wouldn't be able to install the project. So we're working on that component currently, but my understanding is we do have the sufficient number of folks, but it is going to be a smaller project. We had talked before about funding the full distance. The majority of the folks at the farther end had no interest in being part of the project. So it is a smaller project that we'll be bringing to the board.
Right, okay. Okay, well, thank you. And then also on the urban water management plan, I want to support what Tracy Sheehan said about having an informational item in advance of the first public meeting. If we could, as soon as it gets, I don't know, is it going to be rolled out June 1st or when? June 2nd? So maybe the 9th?
Slightly changed a little bit, so I was gonna bring that up at the GM's report,
Okay.
but we can let you know, since we're talking about it, and Tracy's probably on the phone. The idea was that, the date's been pushed back a little bit in terms of rolling it out. We thought the 2nd, it's gonna be more like the 7th-ish, so apologize for a few extra days. But, the idea was going to be for roughly 2.5 weeks, which would be on the street before the first board workshop, which is slated for, I believe, Tracy mentioned it was the 23rd, and I don't know if that's correct. I think it's anyway, that last board meeting of the month.
Yeah, 23rd.
23rd, and then with a following workshop right after that.
An evening one.
What's that, Doug?
The evening one, remember last time we had an evening one scheduled, and then we changed that to do the workshops, and they requested that we still have an evening one. So the idea being that we'd have the first one at the board meeting, and then the second one the following evening, kind of like we did last time.
If the board wants to bring one of those workshops to the 9th, and then we schedule the following evening one, the second one, sometime after that, that's fine. I mean, board workshop would be right after it was released, within days. The idea, our thought was to give the public enough time to review it before we actually talk about it, so there's some substantive questions. So that's where I'm kind of not sure if the request fits. Even if we tried to receive it to the public on the 2nd, that's still a pretty quick turn time. So we were trying to give people as much time as possible to review before we actually had a workshop with the board, and that would give the board enough time. But if you want to change it to bring it up to the meeting of the 9th, we can look at that. It's kind of
Just do a summary sheet of the high-level assumptions or something, just to if there's, I don't know.
Then we'd be getting deep into it. I mean, I think if
That's
we're
fine.
going to keep it 2 meetings, which we have budgeted for, then workshop meetings,
Okay.
public comment meetings.
All right.
Then, this is, remember, prior to the public hearing, which is, at this point, slated for mid-July. So this is all, supposed to go to the state at the end of June. So we're already going to be past. Like I said, if the board's will would to be bring it on the 9th, which would be a couple days now after we anticipate it being released, I think that's pretty quick.
2 days.
The 23rd would give the public a couple weeks to review, 2.5 weeks. Then we have a follow-up meeting right after that in the evening, and then bring it forth to another meeting, which is the public hearing, which would be around July 14th board meeting. I think we'd like to keep to that schedule unless you think otherwise.
That's fine. I think it was kind of the first of the month, the 9th would have been okay, but if it's only 2 days, it's not.
Yeah,
That's fine.
just working through the document, and it's just, I know I mentioned the second, I think, last board meeting as hopefully we get it out by then, but we're now anticipating around the 7th, so
All right.
unfortunately, that's just pushed a little bit.
Okay, and then my final question for you, Doug, is about the district-wide reservoir study. We've had that in-house since January, I believe. And I was just wondering the status of that review. It's been reviewed internally for the last 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, it was been put on the back burner a little bit, but I hope my anticipation is still to get that to the board in the second meeting in June. So we can have a discussion on it.
Terrific. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Director. Director Heck.
Thank you, Mr. President. So my question is on the Lower Scotts Flat Connector Trail. And I know that there was a meeting and comments received. And so what kind of piqued my interest here was it says project to be reevaluated and discussed with the board. So were there comments that we could benefit from seeing in advance, or like, what does that mean? What is that?
So there's a few things moving on this one. In that
Right.
there were particular comments on a couple of the areas where the percent grade was well above 5 to 7%. We were talking into the teens and a couple at 20 for a short period of time. So there were some comments from the public on that, and that's acceptable, right? It came up on the north side of the creek. It came up a pretty steep spot. So we were requested to extend the trail and do maybe some switchbacks, longer gradient switchbacks, which will require more studies and some more activity. On the other half of that is we're looking at the development, the redesign and the redevelopment of the Scotts Flat Spillway, which has everything to do with the crossing of this particular trail over Deer Creek. And there are some things that the contractor for that, if you recall, that's being, there's a large 30-to-1 scale model going on. And so some early representations of that we're still analyzing, but it's possible that we're not done on that analysis. And so we're not ready to design, I think, a trail system that has a knowledge and understanding of where a bridge crossing is going to go until we really understand what's happening with that Scotts Flat Spillway and the bucket at the bottom. And so, plus the costing of that bridge could be quite a bit. The purpose of the thought process now is if we can keep pedestrian access on the top, why spend money for a bridging on the bottom? So that's where the thought process for staff is at the moment. We want to bring that back to the board, but what I do want to bring, what we'll probably do in June or July, is to bring the environmental documents. So we'll finish the Tcwa. We want to bring it, we want to move that forward, because if it turns out that in X number of months or whatever, we actually need to design something with a bridging structure where that spillway facility will not accommodate current pedestrian travel into the ongoing future, then we would have to relook at the bridging structure, and we've done the work to create the Tcwa document. I think we do want to bring that forth. So there's a few things
moving parts.
There's a lot of moving parts in it. That's what that means. Instead of trying to
I appreciate
put it in
it.
narrative
Thank
form.
you for that. I just was trying to, what does this mean?
I know.
Thank you.
We've met with the some constituents out there, the bike club, as well as the Yuba Land Trust, Bear Yuba Land Trust, and so I think the homeowners is another organization that we got to reach out to and talk to them about it. But that's where we're at.
Okay.
So Greg, you mentioned if we could keep it on the top, and I thought the idea was to get it off the top.
I know, interesting, huh?
So what's the update on that part?
That's going to come when we have the full redesign of the spillway.
Oh, with the spillway, okay.
It may be that we have to chop the whole top thing off.
Oh.
I don't know. That's what we're analyzing it at the moment. It may be that we keep it, and then it's the board's discretion whether or not we keep the fencing situation up there and keep public out. They've been up there for decades.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that is.
Well, thank you. I'm done with questions, thank you.
You piqued my interest on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, me too. It's like, oh, interesting.
It's been a little, I mean, it's been moving forward, but it is well, if there's something kind of on the back burner because we know we're still working on the Scott Flats spillway concept.
Okay. Any more questions on the informational updates?
I have one comment.
Go ahead.
On the communications page, I'm excited to look at the book, but my name is spelled wrong. So for whoever is doing this, my name is not correctly spelled. I actually like the way they did it better, but it's not correct.
Really?
Okay. All right, we'll definitely clear that up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any more comments on the informational items? Okay, thank you to the staff for that. Next is a consent agenda.
You want to ask for public comment?
I guess we should have, huh?
Yes.
Ian? Is there any further public comment on the informational items as presented? Star 9 your phone. Joe Fisher, go ahead.
So I may have missed this part. Are you asking for, would this be general comments that if we were in a board meeting, you would just do this at the beginning, or is this just pertinent to that specific topic and I already missed that opportunity?
You did miss that opportunity, that's correct, but
Okay.
Go ahead with your question since you're on the line.
No, I don't have a question. I just, I've wrestled with this comment for a little bit, and I decided that I'll have the opportunity later to share it in a more sharing setting later on this month or next month. But for the record, I wanted it shared that I voiced with a couple of you, both staff and then also directors, that I'd like to see some sort of a timed agenda. And I understand the sentiment of saying that maybe some of these items that are a little bit more pertinent to people on the line, we move up in the agenda. And I definitely appreciate that. But I do think that our district is diverse enough and wide enough that there may be things that interest different people. And because of the nature of the current governance of this board, sometimes the meetings go on forever. And I appreciate your thoroughness. But my two suggestions would be a timed agenda and then also more subcommittees. There's got to be an opportunity to educate directors on items that they're impassioned about in a setting that doesn't take away from me having to not work. All of us that are sitting here as constituents had to take the day off to be here and aren't being paid. And it's not just about pay, it's about our concern and wanting an engaged constituency. And in order to keep doing that, the items of concern, I'd like to be able to go and do something else for 3 hours and then come back. And in that last meeting specifically, Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear all of your opening statements, but I definitely share some of the sentiments that you brought forth. And I don't think it was to silence the debate. It was to just bring about a concern and a general awareness of is this topic pertinent to changing your mind to the actual topic at hand, to the action item at hand. Informational items and questions and such, I could understand. But when we get deeper into this meeting, sometimes I want to make sure that we don't get drug into the weeds and then lose the constituency. We have an impassioned group here that really wants to help be part of solutions. And sometimes we're mired in the weeds of small nuances that really don't matter in the big scheme of things. So I'll look forward to the further items later. I just wanted to make sure that those two items were things discussed and on the record. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe. For your information, I didn't note earlier in the meeting that we do have a time certain with one of our closed sessions at 11 o'clock. So that will be happening there. But your point is well taken. Thank you. Anyone else like to comment on informational items as presented? Star 9 your phone. All right, we will move on. Motion for the consent agenda, please.
Item 2?
Correct. We've already removed item number 2, correct?
Yes. We've removed item number 2, so all we have is to approve the minutes of the regular meeting, May 12th.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting on May 12, 2021.
Thank you.
I'll
Is there-
second.
Second by Director Peters. Madam Secretary, you call the roll, please.
Yes. Division 1,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay. General order Number 3, budget amendment for purchase of PG&E. Boy, look at Chip just moves right in. Thank you, Chip.
Smooth guy there.
Good morning again. All right, wish I was here under better circumstances, but it is what it is. So today we're here to discuss a budget amendment and the potential purchase of PG&E water, but first I'll give you guys a little bit of background and walk you through some water supply updates. As you all are aware, extremely dry and hot conditions have led to the adoption of Resolution 2021-11, which is a declaration of drought for NID, and we did that at the April 28th board meeting. As part of that declaration, though, the board directed staff to pursue a budget amendment for the purchase of PG&E contract water. We think that was very prudent. The intent of the purchase is to bolster carryover storage heading into the 2022 water year. And the importance of finding additional water supplies in a year like this continues to increase as drought is just digging in deeper and deeper. Staff has updated our water supply storage forecast slides, and we will show a comparison with the end of year carryover storage with and without the purchase of PG&E water, so we can talk about that. But basically, based on the analysis, the purchase of supplemental water is necessary to ensure public health and safety supplies in the event that 2022 is dry. Before we dive into the budget discussion, I'd like to go over the water supply numbers. So we'll look at the slides up here. First of all, let me shut off that light real quick. Don't mind. First try. First try. Pretty good, Jeff. Oh, thank you. I've been here a while. First try. Okay. Oh, sure. Okay, so the slide before you on the screen, as you'll notice, it says May 12th. These board packets are due a week early, so some of this information is a little bit old. I'll walk you through some more current stuff as we get to the slides, but we'll start off with our Bowman Lake Precipitation Reporting Station. So I think the board and most of the public are probably used to seeing these slides, but for reference, we'll walk through briefly what we're looking at here. The district has 134 years of precip data that we analyze. The dark shaded background at the bottom right is our average for 134 years. So in any average year, we get 69.56 inches of precip at Bowman Lake. The yellow line that you see is the 2019-2020 winter time precipitation. We got 48.52 inches of rain, so we were dry in 2019-2020. And now the red line is where we're at this year. And you can see we're not doing very good at 33.94 inches of precip. We came to this board in March and discussed this slide, and as you can see, that red line in March was making an upward trend. We had caught 2019, 2020, and we had high hopes that the remainder of the season would give us at least close to average precipitation, and we banked on the fact that we had a pretty good snowpack. Well, since that date, basically, we have flatlined and not received anything. I have also now added to this slide the purple line, and that is 76, 77. So you can see we are tracking pretty doggone close to what was our driest year ever. So given the current conditions, we are probably in the neighborhood of the second or third most driest year we have witnessed here at the district ever. So pretty bleak. Moving on to the next slide, in a similar fashion, this slide shows our 8-year average of our reservoir storage. That's the blue shaded background area. I guess that's an orange line, it's kind of hard to see, but on this slide, the color. But the 2019-2020 is the line that goes off the charts. So although 2019 and 20 was a dry year as far as precipitation goes, we had a pretty good water storage year. We peaked out pretty well. This year, you can see we are tracking, we were on an upward trend. We were counting on that 80% of snowpack to melt and come off into our reservoirs. Unfortunately, what we have witnessed is kind of an anomaly, and it's been talked about at the state quite frequently that this is a year we've never seen. We had a very good snowpack. However, what we experienced was the end of 2019 and 20 was dry. Winter rolled in. It was cold and snowed right from the beginning. So the ground never absorbed any rainfall. It just had snowpack straight on top of it. When the snow melt started, it absorbed into all that dry soil and didn't come in as runoff. And so we did not experience the kind of runoff we anticipated from all the projections. And that is statewide. Everybody is experiencing that. So that has drastically affected our reservoir storage forecasting coming forward, and we'll get into that slide in just a minute. So as I mentioned, this particular slide is as of the 12th. We were at 200,170 acre feet, which all in all, we're at 83% of our 8-year average. Not very good, but not super horrible. But the thing I want to reflect upon is, I threw this slide in here. This is as of 5/19. And the big thing to see is that red line that in the previous slide that was still going up is no longer going up. We have now turned the corner. We are now pulling from storage to make our deliveries, and the runoff has already stopped. So this is as good as it gets as far as reservoir storage for this year. So that's some of the bad.
Chip, I know, I realize we're not supposed to ask in the middle of something, but now I'm here, so.
Yes. There's a question.
Stage 2, when I was looking at our drought stages,
Yes.
this would qualify, if you will, for a stage 2 drought. Is
Yeah.
there?
So if you don't mind, if I can get through
Yeah,
the rest
okay.
of this, I actually have uploaded our drought stages, and we can throw them up on the wall and talk about them.
Okay.
Because I assumed we
Thank
would
you.
want to go over that.
Yeah, I do, that was my.
Okay.
And so does Rich. Go ahead.
Well, I had a quick question. So the 200,000 is current supply in storage, or it is the max we reached, and we still have to deduct for the irrigation water and the raw water and treated water we delivered?
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a second. This is actual current supply.
Okay.
Okay. So the next slide, you're one slide ahead of us. So in April, we came to the board, and this is what kind of helped us make that initial declaration of drought. We took our water supply, we saw that we were going to peak out at 209,000 acre feet. When we project out all of our irrigation water deliveries, our environmental flows, and our treated water demands, you throw those into the giant calculator, who is our water resources superintendent, Tor, does a great job with this. He spit out at the bottom 110,700 acre feet, which for us is a very low carryover number. It was very concerning, which is why we went into declaration of drought. However, it was just voluntary of stage 1. So that was April. Now, you take current conditions and the fact that I mentioned that the snowmelt didn't come in. We didn't get basically any precipitation in April and May. Add to that, it's been super hot, dry, and windy, and we started irrigation season, and our canals basically started off at near summertime flows. Because our customers' lands are so dry, it took that much water to get things wetted up. So we are going through water at a pace you would normally expect in June or July and August. So take that new updated information, and what you're going to see here is this is our forecasted storage moving through the remainder of 2021 irrigation season. The purple line is where we anticipate we will be if we buy the full allotment of PG&E water that we're discussing here today in the budget amendment. The yellow line that you see, the dotted line, is where we would be if we did not buy that PG&E water. So really very alarming. If you don't buy the PG&E water, we end up at 91,700 acre feet. That is a carryover number that I don't think we've seen since the 70s. So I think that justifies a number of things. One is the purchase of PG&E water. I think that's the right thing. Two is, I think it opens up the discussion of our drought contingency plan and what stage we selected. Initially, we talked about a voluntary 10% reduction. We asked for that, but as you guys saw on the slide in the staff update, we're not getting conservation from our treated water folks. And I'm not here to knock them. It was very hot, very dry, and people turned on their irrigation systems. Hopefully now they have the realization that this really is serious and it's time to cut back. In addition, our ag folks have not had the opportunity to cut back yet either. In fact, usage has gone up. So it may be time to revisit what part of drought contingency plan stage we are in. Chris, can we put those slides up? Thank you for that. So can we zoom in a little bit? Is that even possible on PowerPoint? Okay.
Maybe.
The main thing I really want to focus on this first slide, look at that.
That's too much, sorry, now I gotta figure out how to zoom out.
So what you see at the top of this slide is basically the controlling measure of whether we implement a drought contingency plan stage or not. As you can see at the top, it's our April 1 forecasted supply. We've blown past that quite some time ago, so that's kind of off the charts now. The next controlling factor that we look at as a staff or as a district of importance is the carryover storage. Can we roll into stage 2, please? So when you look down here, we pull it under district actions. It's the second one from the bottom in that box. It says purchase available contract water to achieve a carryover target of 110,000 acre feet. Well, guess what? That's exactly what we're doing.
Exactly where we are.
And that's a stage 2. And even with the purchase of all of that water, we're only going to get to, what did I say, 106?
So it's 106
Yeah.
here, yeah.
So we're not even going to make it to where stage 2 calls out. We're very, very close, though. If you roll to stage 3, you'll notice in that same section, our drought contingency plan calls for the purchase of available contract water to achieve a carryover target of 100,000 acre feet. We're somewhere in between these two stages. But that's not the only thing that I think we should be focusing on. It is one of many. There are some very large differences between a stage 2 and a stage 3. For instance, stage 2, when we talk about our probably one of the more controversial things that's going to come up. I'm just going to throw it out there. At stage 2, we talk about how we would limit fall and winter water sales. There would be no new ones. A stage 3 is basically you're going to eliminate fall water sales, period, none. And that is one of the water supply categories that is at the discretion of the district based on our rules and regulations. And in times of need, when water supply is short, it's one of the first services to go away. Winter water customers would remain because they're using the water in their homes for public health and safety. So they're going to remain. But fall water customers, it's that period from October 15th through December 1st.
Till it rains.
Yeah, essentially. That is one of the major differences between a stage 2 and a stage 3. The pricing difference is pretty big too. Honestly, when we go into these mandatory stages, pricing increases come with both of these. A stage 2, I believe, is the 20 or 25%, and then a stage 3 moves it on up to 30 to 35% pricing increase. So that's something else to take into consideration. Let's see what else. So those are some of the big item discussions. I don't believe, and I'm going to defer to Dustin on this a little bit, I don't believe we're prepared today to just jump off the edge and say, hey, we're ready to go with a stage 2 or 3 drought. I think what may be prudent for us is we've opened up this discussion, and if the board is willing or desires, we can bring this back at another board meeting at a level with some actions wrapped up in a resolution to make this a little bit cleaner and allow public comment and allow them some time to review the options for the district.
So just to be clear, Chip, the conversation of moving into a different stage of drought is not the agenda item today. It's only the purchase or not of the PG&E water.
Yes, thank you for that.
Okay.
So the one last thing, and I'm backtracking a little bit, the one last thing I forgot to mention that's a real challenge for us at a staff level is if we implement some sort of mandatory regulation, cutback regulation, how do we implement that with our ag water customers? It's always been a real challenge for us. We have, roughly 5,000 irrigation boxes out there. You can't just snap your fingers, walk out and reorifice every box. That comes at a substantial cost. You've got to buy all the new materials, boards, orifice plates, and it comes at substantial staff time. And realistically, we can't make it through all of those boxes in a timely fashion. It may take months. And so then it's somewhat unfair to somebody who gets reorificed immediately, and we don't make it to the end of the system until a month later. So those are some of the challenges we work with. We have a toolbox that we have developed. Reorificing is one of them. Rotating outages has been talked about, but man, in a system as big as ours with the lag time, it's not very efficient. And then again, the customers at the end have a longer outage time as opposed to folks who are close to the head. But it is another way to mandatorily cut back. Option 3, and this is the one that I think staff favors, is ending the irrigation season early. That is just across the board. Everybody gets treated the same. Generally speaking, comes end of September and early October, the growing season has slowed, days aren't as long, and the demand for water is dropping anyway, so staff feels like that's one of the better options. But I think that's why this needs to be further studied, further agendized, so that we can get more input from our customers, and we'll go down that path. I can say I did bring this up at the Nevada County Ag Commission meeting last week, and we did hear from a number of folks who are pasture growers that it's actually better to cut the season off early as opposed to shorting it in the middle of the season, because shorting it in the middle of the season affects the growth and it potentially may not come back. So anyway, we need to kind of get some of that input from our customer base.
If I could chime in on that one specifically, you were here for 77 drought?
Yes.
Okay, and we didn't have stages at that time, correct?
That's correct.
We just had the public come, and I went to the meetings, and we had a free-for-all to figure it out. Not a free-for-all, but the board recognized the problem. At that time, I believe we were cut 50% for perennial crops and 100% for pasture. Is that correct? Is that the number?
That's what was eventually proposed towards the end.
Yeah.
We made it through the 76, 77. We were ready to implement that the next year.
Okay.
And then we got saved by a very, very wet winter.
Well, my point is, we opted for, and this is what, you brought this up, so I want to chime in on this one, that if it was proposed that we were being cut 50%, we petitioned the district to give us our 50% in 3 months instead of 6 months. And they did, and we had the most marvelous year we ever had on the farm. But so I'm really more in favor of that one than the cost associated and the challenge for the district to reorifice all the boxes. Going forward, I think we can, those are decisions to be made. But I just wanted to throw that out, that was from my own experience. Now, pasture guys, it's maybe different.
Yeah, so one other thing I didn't get to that I wanted to bring up that I think is important to this discussion is that the State Water Resources Control Board has sent out notifications telling us to expect curtailments. They think that's going to happen in early June. What that basically means is that they're expecting to curtail all water rights that are post-1914. What that means to NID is that in any diversion in any stream that we do that's authorized by a water right that's post-1914, we would no longer be able to divert those waters and put them into storage or divert them directly to our customers. We have to let that water pass. We're a little bit fortunate in that I told you earlier that the runoff's kind of slowing down and has almost stopped. We're more fortunate in that we have very senior water rights, and a lot of our water rights are pre-1914. So this will affect us, but it won't affect us nearly as hard as it will affect some other agencies. But it's still something to keep in mind in the overall picture of our water supply. The two remaining concerns with that is There is the potential threat that they will go pre-14 and start freezing some of those water rights.
Yep.
And then additionally, when do they lift that curtailment? It may roll into the winter months, in which we would normally be capturing and collecting and storage. So if those curtailments remain during that period, it will hurt us in the winter too. So, a little bit yet to be seen. So, kind of veering off of topic about the budget transfer of the water purchase, but I kind of wanted to give you guys an update of where we are and let you know that I think what we ought to do, if I'm hearing a unified response that it may be time to study an upgrade of a drought contingency plan stage, then staff can come back to this board at the next meeting with some of our plans, and we can have that open discussion.
Thank you, Chip. Director Dryden.
Chip, we've had numerous conversations, and I know how concerned you are on this. I mean, it affects you personally, and I just appreciate the job you're doing because you really care. Thank you. So those who want to voluntarily reorifice and go down to a smaller amount, do so. It will really help.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We did send out little flyers within all the second installment billings to our ag customers saying, please reduce and your allotment will return. I can say that those have started trickling in now, and we have saved 12 miners inches, which doesn't sound like a bunch, but when you add it up over the season, it's 100 acre feet. I'll take it. Hopefully they keep rolling in.
I'm going to sign one today.
Great.
Yeah.
It's yours.
Thanks.
Chip, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I got a list. So PG&E purchases, I'm all for it. What I'm concerned about when this comes back to us in June 9th, or if earlier we decide, we're already 2 months into the season, and a lot of that water's already out of our system. I'm really concerned about that, and so I'm all up for upgrading. We have to determine how we're going to do that. A couple other issues. Winter water is 40,000 acre feet, and I can't believe all of that is personal health and safety. And is there a way to define that, make it clearer?
I hear your concern. I can let you know that the 40,000 acre feet that is diverted is not necessarily going directly into the customer service outlet boxes. It's the middle of winter, generally speaking. We're diverting the stream flows and putting it right back in at the end of the same stream.
Yeah.
It just so happens that the flows are high, so the water's there, so it looks like we're diverting way more than the customer needs. But essentially, the tailwater's just going right back in.
Yeah, it's not out of storage.
That's correct.
Correct. And what happens to out-of-district sales?
So in stage 2, actually basically from here on out, the drought stages say that we will no longer allow any outside district sales. The wording is a little bit specific in saying exterior boundary sales. So we would cut off all of those folks. Those that are exclusionary islands, we say no additional. And I know you're probably referencing some of the contracts we have with our exclusionary islands. According to these drought plans, those would remain, but no new.
However,
So
the cost would be increased.
Yes.
And
Cost increases across the board.
it's across the board, yeah.
But it's also in conflict with our contract with them.
No.
No.
Well, because in the contract, it says we need to declare a surplus year.
Right, which we.
And we did, but we retracted that.
Yes.
So now we're not in surplus, we're in drought
Yes.
stages. So how do I bring this up? Can there be one stage for our customers and a second stage for out-of-district, inclusionary islands?
Well, that would be against the contract, because the contract, it does say they will do whatever conservation measures and mandatory reductions that we implement, they will abide by as well. doesn't say anything that they would have anything different, it just says you would match whatever we do.
Oh, it didn't say match, it said what we implement.
Yes.
And so it's two different sales. We have one stage for our customers, and technically, I mean, maybe Dustin's gonna have to chime in. It says if surplus water is available, then we sell to out-of-district customer.
Yes.
And if we no longer have a surplus situation, what happens? And realizing we have an obligation, responsibility for public health and safety.
Right.
Understand that.
Yeah. It's a touchy discussion. Where I was referencing, Rich, or Director Johansson, is stage 3, is the language in the Drought Contingency Plan. Stage 3 says, declare no surplus water availability for exterior boundary customers. You can interpret that and say that the city of Grass Valley and the city of Nevada City fall in that category. It will become an argument, and it will become a public health and safety issue. I will add to that, we have some obligation through the Railroad Commission order to serve both of the cities. It's not the entire city, however. It's the city as it existed in 1927. So it opens up Pandora's box. But
So it's an issue for closed session.
And/or further discussions with the cities to get this fixed for the future.
So I'd like to have a reading of our contract with the out-of-district sale customers. And if that's possible.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the differentiation is that our in-district customers have paid for this through property taxes.
Yes.
They have built our system, and the out-of-district have not.
Okay. An out-of-district customer would argue that they're paying 25% more to make up the difference for the lot of tax revenue. But so anyway, I hear where you're at. This is going to be a challenge for us. We really do need to get the service area boundaries cleaned up, especially for the cities.
Yeah.
The external outside district customers, there's not very many, and the water amount is not a lot. So
Yeah. And I think the goal is to clean it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as an out-of-district purchaser of water in the valley, my water rate went up over 5 times.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to get the water. It's just, do I have access to water? And that's the guarantee I want.
Is this the appropriate time?
I think so.
Okay,
I think so.
Director Heck would like to update us on the ongoing discussion with Grass Valley.
Right.
Good.
And it looks like there may be opportunities with the city of Nevada City that I didn't think were there. So in light of all that we know about this, with them, those cities being out of district, I had several conversations with members of Grass Valley City Council, and had a more formalized meeting and with one of the council members, who has then taken this to Tim Keyser, and you may have already been in touch with him, but then I had a conversation with Director Beerwagon to say, look, I think what we need and what has been requested is essentially another ad hoc committee of a couple of board members to then meet with a couple council members and then our staffs to just, we got to work this out. You know, they have to come in. They probably want to come in. There was some roadblocks that were there from some years ago, but I think that it's in everybody's interest, and they believe it is also in their interest
Everybody's
to work
interest.
this out.
Yeah.
And so this is the ideal time. There seems to be will and energy behind working it out. And so what we have loosely arranged is that there will be an introductory, quote unquote, kind of kickoff meeting to include Jennifer, our new GM, when she arrives, and Chip and Greg, sort of whoever, that's yet to be determined, and probably Director Beerwagon and I, or whoever he appoints. So my goal and role has been just to get the conversation going. And now it appears as though there's will and energy to move it forward. So that's the update.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Ricky. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that's really-
Appreciate you facilitating that work.
Well, we're just trying to make it work.
Yeah.
And I know we can make it work.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Back to the item.
Back to the actual
I was
items,
gonna-
right?
So if you all want to discuss the budget amendment portion of this
Yes.
topic, back on topic, any questions in regard to that? I think we kind of clearly spelled out that our goal was to find funding for this in a manner that wouldn't necessarily affect the outcome of any of the projects that were in the current budget. That was the goal. I think we found some very creative ways to find funding. And so hopefully that meets with your approval.
Chip, my question is on the allotment, I think the explanation was that this isn't our full allotment, but it's based on their shortage of water too, correct?
That's correct. It is based on the type of water year we're in. We're in a very dry water year, so that affected how much was available. The contract says we can be up to 54,000 acre feet.
Right.
Obviously, this is much less than that. I will say though, however, the allotments that come to us through PG&E are based on a month by month. And that's what you see in the report. I broke it down, how much water we would get each month. There is more water available in October, November, December. Generally speaking, we don't buy water in those months because irrigation season's over and the rains are on the way. But if we so desire, come October and we're really behind still, we can buy more.
That's good news. Okay, thank you. Director Peters.
I want to thank you, Chip, for anticipating our questions and answering them. It's really helpful to have information. Thank you.
Director Hick.
Thank you. So back to the budget, I noticed that there was no money coming over from hydro, and yet 200,000 from recreation. And so I'm thinking, well, why isn't hydro chipping in here? I mean, it was just a natural question. So can you speak to that for a minute? And
well, quite frankly, I really didn't reach out to them to ask for funding because we found what I thought were very good budget areas to pull from. For instance, recreation, yeah, we pulled the capital funding out of 200,000, but the reason we did that is we're going to be giving them one of our generators that is no longer sized sufficiently for the pump station. We're going to send it over to recreation and put it in over there.
oh, so they don't.
They're not out anything, and we get to use the money for the water purchase.
I see.
It's a win-win. So quite frankly, I just didn't need to go to hydro for any additional funds at this point, but maybe come October. Hint, hint, Kian.
Get ready, Ken, we're coming for you. Well, thank you. You can see why I would ask that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then just the follow-up question is, should we need more money somewhere, or more water somewhere July, August, are we able to then go back and increase the purchases, the allotments?
No, this is the maximum amount.
This is the
available
max we're allowed at
during those months. That's correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel like it's really very much water, but maybe.
Not, but I'll take it.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, that with conservation may just, okay, thank you. And again, great job, man. It's really good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Can we do public service announcements or anything like that to try and reach out to the ag community to have, to let them know that this is the time to conserve if possible?
Yes, absolutely.
Or
And,
the raw water community.
I appreciate that, and I think we sent the second billing installment out very early, weeks earlier than normal, specifically to get this notification out to everyone that we are asking for voluntary reductions. And so that was one of our communication efforts, but we'll have many more. And I think as we move forward and dive a little deeper into some sort of mandatory drought stage, we're going to get a lot more response and hopefully a lot more input from our ag community.
The other way to do that is to work with our partners such as the farm bureaus and their networks. The best way to get our information out is not necessarily through our
Right.
small group of individuals who might watch our website or read our press release, but it's to coordinate with the farm bureaus and the commissioners on both Nevada and Placer County. and really utilizing their network to help get our word out. So, yes, absolutely.
That's preparing documents to get them or.
Yep.
Yeah, talking points, ideas, wording a narrative exactly like we put in our mailers. That's a big push.
Yep.
So Chip, my question was, I had a constituent call and said, if you paid your whole bill, you don't get another bill, so you didn't get the little notice.
Oh, we mailed it to everybody, even if you paid your full balance.
Okay, so I'll have to go back and look at my inbox.
I can make another copy.
No, I don't need one. I'm already prepared to do
Yeah.
that, so.
Okay.
The other question, are those people gonna be reorganized at this time?
Get one for everybody.
Yes,
They are.
yes, if they're reducing, we are going out and redeciding.
Okay, all right,
Let's step up.
good. Thank you, Chip. Any more comments or questions?
Just a quick one, I guess we're gonna have to, declaring a surplus in March, odd year, unusual year, but maybe we're gonna have to look at a later date,
Yes.
all the different factors, because we got climate change, we got a lot of changes now that we never had to deal with when the stages were made.
We're not the only agency that did not foresee this coming, and I will throw basically the entire state in that bucket, including the State Water Resources Control Board. They are amazed at how little runoff we actually got.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was shocking. So are we ready for a public comment or a motion?
Comment? Yes.
Can I ask you a question, directors?
Yes.
This, Chip, goes back to your forecast slide with the purchase and without the purchase.
Yes.
I'm curious if you could describe your assumptions. You know, I assume you've got some demand assumptions in there, maybe even curtailment, maybe conservation, I don't know, but I'm curious about how accurate you think these projections are.
So they are projections. They do not take into account curtailments because we don't know what the seniority level in the curtailment is at this point in time. They also forecast out what our average deliveries are. So they are not taking into account conservation. So if we do get major cutbacks voluntarily, that number will go up. That carryover storage will go up. Additionally, if we cut off the season early, it will only boost those numbers.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking my question.
Speaking of curtailment, have we ever been, in the last drought, did we have to curtail? Is this
Yes.
term 91 curtailments?
This is not term 91, this is just flat out curtailment of water rights. And yes, we did go through this in 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
How much did they cut? How?
It's impossible to say, because once you curtail, you're no longer diverting, you don't know how much water is in the stream and how much you let pass, that kind of thing. I will tell you though, but as I mentioned earlier, because of many of our pre-14 rights, there are still a lot of locations that we can take the water in. We're very senior. Right now, I think this initial round of curtailment probably will only affect Wilson Creek, which is way up in the upper watershed by Jackson Meadows. But we have yet to see. I don't know how deep the state's going into the priority list of water rights.
So we do have an operational plan of how to address that should it be?
Absolutely. We have to report every year on our water rights, and we have to prove that we did not divert during the curtailment.
So, some reference, going into the 14 drought, there was 176,000 acre feet carryover. The next year, there was 146,000 acre feet, and then the following year, about 111. And if we would have one more dry year, boom. So the curtailments hurt. And we had actually wetter winters than we had in 19, and then in 2019 and 2020. This was the second driest 2 years on record.
Yeah, so I would expect early to mid-June, we're going to see just a straight post-1914 water rate curtailment.
Yep.
All of them at once. And that was fairly implementable. We did that same exercise in 14 and 15. Given the dry conditions, I would actually expect the state water board to go into pre-14. They did, I believe, in, I can't remember if it was 14 or 15, one of the years, probably 15. And it was through about a 1902 or so priority, something like that.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, though, even with a curtailment into pre-14 rights, that does not affect your ability to divert storage, which by the time this occurs, we're operating almost exclusively off storage.
Mhm.
So, while you're curtailed, it doesn't impact your operations too much, fortunately. The big dynamic, which, we worked closely with the Water Board on in 14 and 15, is when does the curtailment lift? Because you want to capture, if you get a really good October, November storm, you want to capture that water, even though the system may not be fully flushed up to justify, a writ sale lifting of curtailments. You'd still like to capture everything you can, especially in your higher reservoirs. So that'll be an ongoing discussion in the summer months with the state board on, how to ensure that we're not losing water, especially early in the fall, in the event the curtailments haven't been lifted just yet. So it's a very difficult, these curtailments are very difficult, a lot of data. State Water Board, in my opinion, they're actually doing a pretty good job. To their credit, they're digging into this issue. We, as I said in prior meetings, we like the curtailment system. We want it to work. We want it to be fair. That's what we've had for over 150 years here in the state. We don't want some other system that, I don't even know what it would be, but curtailment's what we have. It provides certainty. We want the State Water Board to make that system work and be fair. So.
Amen.
Director Hick?
Thank you. So one of the things that in this discussion we spoke about was bringing back the issue to the board and for the public of another declaration of stage 2. So before we leave this topic, I guess my request, and if we have a consensus, would be to bring that back at whatever appropriate meeting it is, the first or second meeting in June, I guess.
Well, earlier maybe than.
Well, I agree,
Earlier the better.
but I don't know, I would say the next meeting, but.
The next meeting, can't do it earlier than the next meeting.
We certainly definitely try to squeeze that in.
Or earlier.
Chip and I will talk, and
Well, we could do a special
We
meeting,
could do
Yeah.
an emergency meeting we could do.
I mean,
I think it'll take us that
Takes
much
a little
time to
bit
get
of time.
the data developed to this.
Right.
I'm assuming this is a new or an adjusted resolution. How does that work?
It'll be a new resolution. I'm thinking out, Chip and I, and we'll talk offline, but we may want to jump to an actual adopted water conservation program, so that this is a defined program under the water code. There's penalties, so to speak, that you could implement. This is what we did in 14 and 15.
So it has a good implementation plan.
But in order to do that, there's a public hearing and a public notice, newspaper notice, I believe, requirement. So what I'm saying is we can target the 9th and try to hit that as a goal, but if we miss it because of the noticing requirements, we can talk about.
Then maybe we need to have a special. Yeah, because I think that our constituents and the public is very much aware of all of this, and there will be understanding and support. And so the sooner that we can, as a board, take action to.
the better the
better it is, so.
That's
So that was my first comment. And my second comment is, last time when we declared stage 1 drought, there was discussion about restarting the drought group. Or hardship, yeah. And
Yep.
so I haven't seen anything about that. Or do we have the ability to do
Chip
that?
sent information to.
Get your names into
Everybody.
Chip.
Get your name to Chip.
You did? Oh, you know what? You sent it probably to my, okay. I didn't receive that, but that's probably.
It's on the email
Yeah, they were sent.
When?
recently,
Yeah.
or since the
And-
last meeting.
Two weeks ago.
See, I was,
After the last meeting.
yeah, I was not here,
Yes,
so,
I-
in, my apologies. So I will, maybe if you wouldn't mind, Chip, I don't want to take your time, but if you could just resend it to my personal email, then I make certain I can capture it.
And my email as well.
Thank you.
So that's an appointment by each director for.
So we each get one appointed
So
person.
far, I've received one back, so.
Oh, okay, well, we need to do that then.
We need to
Yeah,
do that.
Let's get them in.
ASAP.
So,
And are they typically ag
yes,
folks? They're all
Good.
ag related?
They're-
In my memo, I kind of spell out what their rules and
Oh, great.
responsibilities are. and
Okay.
Hopefully help guide you on who that.
Okay, thank
right
you.
person is.
I'll take a look at it then,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Okay, that's all I have.
Director Jones.
so two things, and could the Drought Hardship Contingency Committee meet right after our meeting, if we declare a higher stage, or during that meeting,
Yeah, absolutely.
kind of,
Maybe
just
that's
to
where
get
we
them,
appoint them.
so that they can appoint, and then, yeah, and then kind of get brought up to speed, because we need to get up to speed really quick. And then second thing, people who are voluntarily conserving water now may still be subject to a higher mandatory reduction.
That they may, yes.
Yes.
You know, initially, our effort was to say, hey, if you voluntarily reduce, we won't cut you anymore. But,
We're beyond that.
scenarios like ending the season early is going to affect everybody.
Yeah.
Even if you already voluntarily cut.
Okay. Any other director comments or questions?
Public
We'll
comment.
go to public comment now. Dan Macon, you got your hand raised, go ahead.
Well, good morning, directors. This is Dan Macon, UC Cooperative Extension, Livestock and Natural Resources Advisor, and also an ag water customer. Just a couple of comments relative to the proposed purchase and to the drought conversation that you've been having. Chip alluded to the fact that ag demand is high and is as high as it typically is in midsummer. This year, we've had the greatest soil water deficit of any time in my memory. We went into irrigation season with virtually no soil moisture at all. And so many folks that are irrigating commercially are just now catching up with where they would typically be midsummer in terms of their soil water content. And I don't see that changing. It's going to be a difficult year throughout. I'd also like to suggest in response to several of the comments about public service, your ag water customers absolutely know this is a dry year. There is no question that this is one of the worst years that any of us has ever experienced. I think where the public information can be helpful is in helping non-commercial agriculture raw water customers understand that as well. And I think that's a challenge that all of us can collaborate on. I would also remind you all that irrigated pasture is in fact a permanent crop. It doesn't involve the capital outlay that trees or vines involve in getting them established. But irrigated, I work with ranchers who have irrigated pastures that are 30 and 40 years old. And so I think there is that kind of capital outlay out there that an early end or a reduction in deliveries will impact. And I think it's really important to have your hardship committee on board as soon as possible in that regard. And then lastly, and Chip also mentioned this, I think there is some research within the various agricultural crops that are grown in the district in terms of what types of irrigation reductions are most effective and protect those long-term investments. For irrigated pasture, it probably does make sense for most people to consider an early end of their season. But for somebody with trees or vines, and Director Beerwagen would know this far better than I, it may be a different set of circumstances that would be most appropriate to reducing water use while maintaining the survival of those crops. So I just wanted to raise those points. I think there'll be opportunities as you take this movement to stage 2 or stage 3 up to provide more information, but I do appreciate you taking this on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Yes.
Yeah, Dan, I really appreciate that nuance that you mentioned, because not all raw water, in fact, a diminishing proportion of our raw water is ag. We have a lot of very, different types of use of our water than commercial agriculture. So that goes back to the public service announcements. I mean, to reach some of these people, we've got to get the word out to the broader community that has their ponds and their pools and their, whatever they've got going on. It's their lifestyles. And so we need to reach a broader audience of our raw water customers than strictly the ag community.
And
Director Johansson.
to tag along with that is that the Ag Hardship Committee can make that distinction.
Right. Right.
So people coming to them will have a criteria proving that they are commercial agriculture.
Food producers, right?
Well, food and fiber.
Food and fiber.
Flowers.
Yeah.
Basically,
Thank
the
you,
the
Chris.
Drought Hardship Committee only reviews application from commercial growers. Not growers. That's their purpose.
Right.
And do we have any feel for the percentage of raw water that is true ag versus other?
That's for us to figure out in the coming years, right?
Right, that's
Right. That's what we talked
on
about.
our
Yeah.
to-do list.
And the same with, the whole discussion about who's commercial and who's not, the small guys are still
That's
selling some food, as they,
not for today.
But based on the customer base, I think even the small guys is not
Right.
the lion's share of our raw
Right,
water
right.
customers.
Okay, any further public comment on this item? Budget amendment to purchase the PG&E water.
I'll make a, budget, or
Make a motion?
I'll make a
Make a
motion,
motion.
that we accept the budget amendment and purchase of PG&E water.
Second?
Second?
You have another hand that just went up,
Oh.
then it went down.
Just went down,
There
it
it
went
is.
back up. Okay. Joe Fisher,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Thank you, guys, and obviously I'd echo some of Dan's comments. I didn't really have a whole lot to add, but some items I did, and I'm sorry, I did put it in the allotted time. It might just taken a while. Couple things to take from this. First of all, absolutely great job, Chip, and everybody that heads up their own little organization within the NID. Just thank you for giving up whatever you had to within your budget. I do think it maybe points the finger there to wow, we could kind of snap our fingers and come up with 600,000, though. That's probably something to keep in the back of our minds. But thank you to all those guys being able to put that together, and gals. I remember from 14 to 16, one thing that the situation did is it did galvanize us as a community of raw water users. We had a closer relationship. That's how I know Chip and Greg on a first name basis. NID did an outstanding job of outreach. I knew all the directors at that time, and we were able to get through it together. And I actually said if we'd have had one more, I remember saying this in jest, if we had one more year of drought, we probably would have bolstered the infrastructure to prepare for this in the future. I sort of feel like we're always batting from a 2-0 count, and we're kind of playing defense. And I understand that there's climate changes and trend changes, but we really need to look at the stark reality that is our supply cannot consistently meet demand. And a sentiment among board members and constituents often is, what is real agriculture? Is there real agriculture in these communities anymore? Well, there is, but it's damn tough to budget what we're going to do when we don't know if we're going to have water or not. Just like Mr. Macon said, I mean, we've known it's going to be a drought since January, and we've been planning and we've been culling and we've been doing all the stuff on our end that we could. But this question in the back of our mind of, well, we're going to have full deliveries, then we aren't. Are we aren't? I think those are very fluid discussions. I realize that, but I hope that one thing that can come out of this meeting is, instead of saying, obviously triage, but then say, what do we have to do to come up with a group to look at what the water forecast is going to be for delivery to our raw water customers in the next 10 to 15 years, and the next 20 years? What's that going to look like? So, and then the other question I'd have is, and I don't even know if this is an option, provided that pre-1914 water rights are challenged, is there an option for any sort of legal inquiries or questions, or is it just, this is what's going to happen? Is NID prepared to do what it takes to protect the water rights that we have? And maybe Chip answered that question. I'm talking through this with what we have stored is stored. But I do remember in 14 through 16, lots of water going on by because state moves at such a tortoise pace, and we were unable to capture a lot of water that was flowing because they just didn't get to lift in the curtailments during the raining season. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Joe. Any more public comment, any comments from anybody? We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, you call the roll, please.
And can I confirm who was my second?
Ricky.
Thank you very much. Okay, Division 1,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chip, for a
Thanks,
great
Chip.
job and a great presentation. And you are a good bearer of the bad news. At this time, we'll take a 5-minute break.
You know what?
Well, we have a
Can
time.
I just ask,
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. President, that we do have a hard stop at 11. I want to see if our consultant's here. Maybe we take a 5-minute break, like you mentioned, come back, and then we may just go into our break. If he's here or not, I need to double check, and we can just jump into that as soon as possible.
We would need to take public comment on closed session.
Yeah, so we can take a break, and then we'll come right back.
Take a break now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, and I'm opening the room up, and we are live.
Okay, at this time, we are going to move into our next general order, number 5, grand jury report.
No.
No?
Number 4, the update to the memorandum of agreement with Placer County and Placer County Water.
I crossed out, sorry.
You crossed that out earlier?
I crossed out
Okay,
the time certain part of that one. Okay.
Yeah. No, we're gonna enter into item number 4. And just for the public out there, we're gonna do a hard stop at 11. We'll do that as soon as this item is complete. Our consultant just isn't available at this moment. So we'll jump into item number 4, and I see that Paul in Placer County is on the line if he needs to jump in for questions. So I'll go and open this. Greg Jones, Interim General Manager. Over the last couple years, there's been an ongoing conversation about how to facilitate water delivery to the Placer County Government Center, which is in Auburn. It's on the corner of Bell Road and First Street, and to the south of that, Willow Street, so kind of that Richardson area. As you're going down Highway 49, it's off to the west of 49. In 2019, the Placer County Board of Supervisors approved the master plan update for the Placer County Government Center. This was formerly the DeWitt Center, so they're kind of changing their name on that. And this master plan update helps provide a planning guide to help steer capital improvement projects within their footprint over the next several decades. Both NID and PCWA supply water to this total campus. PCWA has been supplying water through a master meter off of First Street for many years, and NID has been supplying the Community Resource Development Center, which is on the corner of Bell Road and Richardson, for consumptive use and emergency fire suppression. We've been serving that building for quite a number of years as well as we and PCWA contain 2 emergency water interties within this area. So NID's facilities surround it, PCWA's are right there, and this is right along the borderline of the 2 agencies' service territories. To support this development, Placer County did a master plan study and identified the best and most cost-effective way for the county to engage in water services for the government center. And so they've facilitated and we've worked with both Placer County and PCWA over the last couple of years in order to develop this concept of their kind of a joint share of utility services, water utility services for the area. Amongst this is our Placer County Water Agency NID service territory agreement that we are also updating at this same time, and this area is party to that. It's not this agreement today, but that's gonna come as an agreement between PCWA and NID in the future. This area is part of that, but it also contains other sections of Placer County as well. And this area that we're referring to in, I think it's attachment 1, is gonna have to be annexed. And so we will annex soon after, hopefully the board approves this resolution and this agreement today. Both Placer County Water Agency and Placer County have both approved this agreement that's within your packet now. Yesterday, Placer County Board of Supervisors approved this agreement, and on May 20th, PCWA Board of Directors approved this agreement as well. So we're kind of third in line here, but we're right in there. The agreement, like I said, it sets the stage for future master plan development, both on commercial services as well as an increased amount of county-run services. And so the agreement between the 2 water agencies, NID and PCWA, is that NID will be servicing all of the private commercial properties that are to be developed onto this site, and within the area of attachment 1 that we will annex after this process is over. And then PCWA will take over the remainder of the future build-out of county buildings and county services, covering the remainder of the government center.
Greg, didn't we annex?
So we annexed a small portion.
I remember that we did, but I couldn't figure out from the map.
So if you look at annexation, if you look at Exhibit 1, Attachment 1, you can see in the square, it's in the center, there's a little finger that sort of sticks down south into the east along First Street. That is the section that we annexed.
Yeah.
About a year ago, and that's Mercy Housing.
That was for Mercy Housing,
That's right.
I remember.
And that was a private development, and NID is supplying water to that facility. It's this pink area that is what we will be annexing in the future that is part of the Placer County Government Center Master Plan, and that's where they're going to have mostly commercial facilities that NID will be servicing. There's a couple attachments here of the actual layout of the master plan. I don't necessarily need to get into that. The parties have all agreed on this agreement, and it's about a 9-page document. It's been reviewed by NID legal counsel, PCWA legal counsel, and the county council, as well as staff for all entities. And you can see there's a number of provisions within it. We listed some of the main bullet points within the agreement here in the staff report. One item that is, I think probably of interest is that we ensured that in order for the annexation process, because we don't have budget at the moment for annexations within NID, so the county will be picking up the cost of the annexation for these parcels once we design it and move forward with that process. But other than that, it's really kind of a straightforward memorandum of agreement between all parties. And like I say, there's really 2 steps after this, which is the TCWA NID Service Territory Agreement Amendment, which we've amended, I think, 2 or 3 times, 4 times in the past. Last time might have been in 2012 or something like that, right? And so it's ready for a reboot and an amendment. We've talked about this at the 2x2, the PCWA NID committee meetings, ad hoc committee meetings. And then, so we're going to update that, and then we move into annexation. And the county's really ready to go. They're getting phone calls from commercial businesses to want to place their service and their operation in this area. So, questions?
Director Peters.
So just to be clear, this exclusion area, this island of ours right here, other than the pink, this odd-shaped area, it'll be a permanent exclusion area. We're going in future service to that exclusion area.
That's a good question. It's currently a permanent exclusion area. This pink would be the only section that would be annexed. There is a small, in the upper northwestern portion, you see that little square that's on that parcel map? That is the Guild Hall. NID currently services that particular building. But it is in the exclusionary zone of the district. We would anticipate bringing that particular parcel into the district at some point in the future. It's not part and party to this concept at all, but the remainder of this in white will foreseeably stay in white for perpetuity. PCWA has been servicing this section, which is Heritage and Professional Drive, for over 35 years. They have private businesses. There's a kind of a professional buildings in there, doctors' offices, etc. PCWA has been servicing that for forever. The big, large parcel, which is right there on the First and Willow Creek, that's Home Depot. PCWA services that. NID has fire service to that? No, we don't.
No, they built
It's just an intertie. Yeah. They built their own storage underneath it. But that will stay foreseeably future PCWA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, you're done.
Oh, go ahead, Director Hall. Not Director, Heck.
Thank you. A couple quick questions. I did not see any kind of tax sharing in this agreement. Is there, did I miss it?
No, so that's part of our already Placer County NID tax sharing agreement, so that whenever one of these private businesses become its own entity on this parcel, NID facilitates the 1% of their property tax. We get 1/10 of 1%.
So there's an overriding agreement that
We have our overriding
Okay.
agreement with Placer County overall.
Okay, and my next question is, when we talk about the acknowledgement of the county's inactive irrigation account of 12 minus inches, are they paying some sort of standby fees?
Yes.
They have been paying, and how long has that been in, how long have we been holding those 12 minus inches?
We wanted to clarify that in this agreement. We're not holding 12 minors inches for them. They are an inactive account, just like any other inactive account we have. We are aware they would like to purchase 12 minors inches in the future. This agreement says we're aware of that, and if it's available, we will sell it to you. That's essentially what this is clarifying. But they are paying a standby fee.
They are,
for their
okay.
account and have done so for a long, long time. I don't know that specific.
So overlaying our drought discussion,
Yes.
how would that impact, 12 minus inches is, it's a lot of water.
It's a lot.
And would that be, if they suddenly said, yes, we want to activate our account now, would we be required or obligated to serve them at this point? Or does the drought kind of supersede that, or where?
Yeah, so if we implement some sort of drought stage that says no new ag water connection or irrigation water connection, that would trump anything else. Essentially, this agreement, the county wanted to make sure that we knew they had an interest in using irrigation water on those grounds, and we're aware of that, but it really allows for no special treatment of that box. They're another customer, ag water customer, just like everybody else. And I would assume that in a drought condition, if we needed to cut them back, they would just switch to treated water for irrigation purposes.
Okay. And then my last question is, when you look at this area in the pink, this is my real estate hat, it's odd that we would cut across streets, and it almost looks like there's parcels that get severed in some way, and so I'm curious about why these lines are where they are.
It's leftovers from a time in which the district was formed. So back in 1926 or 27, when the district took over Placer County service area, the parcels looked very different back then, but certain parcels elected not to become part of NID, and that leaves you with very odd-shaped parcels that no longer relate to current parcel data.
Well, that was it's like, yeah, so you've got person A here, person B here, and you're going, well, you're in and you're out, and the line's gonna go through your front yard, or, or whatever. This seems like an odd configuration.
It is, but if you see the future build-out of what the county is planning for that area, it fits nicely within the yet-to-be-developed private parcels.
I don't know if Paul's been working on this project, and he's the planner down there at Placer County. Paul Breckenridge, would you be able to answer that particular question regarding the layout of the odd shapes of the parcel?
And whether it cuts across
which is 064.
parcels.
It
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, good morning, directors. Paul Breckenridge, Capital Improvements Manager with Placer County. Thanks for having me on today. Yeah, I think, Greg Chip, I think you described it extremely well, that as the master plan goes, this will actually help clean up and is in alignment with the geometries of that master plan for private uses into the future. So the areas, the parcels, if you will, that are along what is First Street, which is the north-south, and Willow Creek Drive, which is the east-west section, are in alignment with what would be potential future private uses in that area, and would align with those roadways. And this is just as the annexation would occur, it would just help to clean this up. So as you go to if you're looking at the NID exhibit, if you go to the attachment 3, Let's see.
Yep.
Let's see, I think I actually, let's see, I don't have one. It shows the master plan. Let's see. No, I think that'll take care of it, that attachment in the master plan will align with new development. So the annexation will work well with that.
Okay. It just looked odd to me.
Yeah, it's odd now, but I think once we get done with the annexation, it'll make sense. And we're very thankful. We're already kind of processing, the Mercy project is already underway to get NID water, so we're very pleased with that moving forward. So we've already started.
I defer to all of you who know better, but thank you.
Further questions?
It's related, but not directly. What is the status of that Mercy project? Is it getting close to completion or?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We're pretty excited about that. And I did want to just give a shout out to the NID team with Chip, Greg, Doug Hobbs too, that we're looking for an October completion. It is not an easy project when it comes to NID and raw water in a canal, and your team has just been phenomenal to work with. So we're on time, on schedule, and we're hoping to have things wrapped up in October for 79 units of affordable housing with NID water.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I encourage you to drive by it. It's coming along.
I've driven by and it's hard to tell, where it's at.
Sure.
There's probably interior work now.
It involved encasing that whole canal through the.
Yeah, moving it and piping it.
Will that help the downstream? I know that further down Atwood, that's not the Shannon Canal. I can't remember the name of that canal, but there's that blow off there and all that. Is this going to help that situation?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's definitely not a restrictive point. Nice box section culvert. It's just what we need to do that section. Yeah.
Great.
And then I can add, they did the treated water tie-in, I believe it was last week. So the transmission mains running down first are now charged up. Yeah, we're moving along.
Oh, that's terrific. Good to know. And I have one final, this last sentence on the budgetary impact, I really like it. The future infrastructure construction costs, it says related to this, but it's really any future infrastructure related costs. It will be the responsibility of the private business customer or the people that are going to benefit from it. I really wholeheartedly embrace that concept. Just for the record.
Okay. Any further comment or question from the board? Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Memorandum of Agreement with Placer County, PCWA, Water Service to Placer County Government Center. Any public comment starting on your phone? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
A motion that we approve a memorandum of agreement with Placer County and Placer County Water Agency for the water system distribution and ownership at Placer County Government Center and authorize the interim general manager to execute this.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Our Placer County folks over there.
Thank you so much.
Any further, you're welcome, thank you, Paul.
Paul.
Any further discussion for the board? Okay, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 2.
Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chip. Thank you, Paul.
Much appreciated.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So our consultant for the closed session is still delayed.
Okay.
So he got stuck, in some traffic. So I'm still tracking that. We should just jump into the next item and carry on.
I had a question back on the last item I should have asked.
Yeah.
Is this clean up all the stuff that was left in this area, or is there still some remaining?
Yeah, like I said, there's that one. Well, when we say this area, you're not referring to Placer County Islands, right? Because there's a lot. There's still this little, the Guild Hall, which is in the corner.
No, but I meant the
little thing.
The bigger picture.
No, not at all.
This is cleans it up.
No.
Okay. Good.
This cleans this section up, Placer County Government Center.
particular.
But it does not clean up Placer County islands.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that. I meant this.
Job security
This
in
bad
that.
spot. Okay. All right. At this time, we'll move on to General Order number 5, Grand Jury Report.
Yeah, so Chip just stepped out for a second. Give us one.
Is he up?
He went to grab something. He wasn't sure we were gonna have time to jump into this, but I think we can start jumping in.
There's Aurora.
Good morning.
Good morning, Aurora.
Chip passed you in the hall?
He did.
Okay.
Pass the baton.
They're incoming.
There we go. Sorry about that. Time not so certain.
Well, I had to get my notes.
Yeah, just, so we do have the consultant coming, and I was trying to weigh the timing. He's still not here. We could table this until what would be probably early afternoon and just take a break. Otherwise, we could go, and I'm assuming,
Let's go.
I think we
Well,
can.
and I imagine members of the public are there to
Yeah,
listen to this.
let's just go.
And this is an update.
This is an update. There's no action.
Okay, are we ready then?
Welcome back, Chip.
Thank you.
You're got the hot seat today.
Yeah, I feel it. Okay, so here we are to discuss the grand jury report regarding NID billing and payment fees. I'm just going to go through a very brief background on how we got to where we're at and kind of the process we went through. The grand jury report actually does a decent job of describing some of that.
Yes, it did.
And really what I'm after is to open this up to your questions so we can answer them all. And then at the end of it, we will go over the grand jury report's findings and recommendations. Within the report itself, it asks for a response from NID, the board, by July 3rd. Staff has kind of put together some preliminary responses that we would like to run past you and just get your input on. So we'll get to that at the end. So with that, and have an opportunity to introduce yourself. We have Aurora Tipton here as well. She is our customer service administrator, and she helps in all of this establishment. So she's here for our expertise. Okay, so back in 2014, the district began allowing credit card payments. This is way back when we had Wells Fargo as our banking agency, and they charged us a transaction fee, so we passed that along. We charged customers $3 per transaction, and we only allowed this for our treated water customers. Reason being is that the merchant fee that we were charged is based upon the amount that is charged on the water. Allowing irrigation water customers to utilize this service meant that fee would have to be much, much higher, because we have some ag water customers that had bills of $20,000. Paying those on a credit card is rather expensive in merchant fees. So anyway, we established it in 2014. We only allowed it for treated water customers, but then our raw water customers started asking, well, what the heck, we would like to pay with that option as well. So we started exploring, can we do that? Are there other ways to do this process? And then we also came to the realization that we were processing these transactions in-house, and it was very manual. And we were writing down customer credit card numbers and information and storing those, and we had no protections or insurance to do so, and we were vulnerable to hacking and things of that nature. So we called the big timeout and said, hey, wait a minute, we need to come up with a different plan, and started investigating our options. And adding to that, while we started investigating those options, we also found out that many people were asking for online bill pay that would just be paperless and allow them to pay with a credit card all the time. So this was a great opportunity to tackle all of those topics. So we started reaching out to multiple vendors. We reached out to three specifically. We reached out to Data Pros, who is already one of our existing vendors. They help us with our billings and mailings. We reached out to a company called WaterSmart, and we also reached out to a company called Paymentus. We quickly realized that WaterSmart was very impressive, but what they offered was an entire suite of customer service. Essentially replaced your customer service team. They did it all from leak calls to conservation to bill pay to all of it. It was way more than we needed and came at a pretty steep price. Data Pros, however, we have a relationship with them. We got a couple, actually, different proposals from them, and they looked somewhat promising. However, they didn't offer as thorough a package as the Paymentus option, and it came at a cost for setup and fees that would have cost the district to set it all up. Paymentus, however, was selected as the superior option because it came at zero cost to the district. Essentially, Paymentus sets up the entire credit card payment program. They set up everything for us. When we get a call from a customer that says, hey, I want to pay by credit card, all we do is forward it to Paymentus. They take care of the rest of it. They send us the reports to update our billing. They do all of it. It is a turnkey package at zero cost to the district. So staff thought that was the appropriate option. And the reason staff thought that was the appropriate option is twofold. One is no cost to the district, and two, only the customers that are utilizing the service are paying for it. And we thought that was appropriate given Proposition 218, in which Proposition 218 states that you can only charge customers for the services rendered. So we had trouble with folding these services in and charging our entire customer base for credit card billing when a majority of them aren't using it. So this option allowed those folks that wanted to pay by credit card, they could do it, they pay the fee, it's all on them, and those costs don't get passed to anybody else. We thought that was a very good option. So we negotiated with Paymentus back and forth and finally came up with a $3.75 fee for every $1,000 that you pay, and that was the contract we established. It was a 5-year contract. We took that back to, I should back up a little bit and say we kept the WHO committee apprised of our actions during the process, basically just through verbal updates. And then we came to the board 2 or 3 times and just, again, a verbal update and the general manager's comment. So that's about as far as it went as far as the decision-making process at a board level, just an update. The reason being is that, again, it's a no cost to the district and it's a voluntary program from our customers. So we took the approach that it really doesn't affect the district. However, when you read the grand jury report, I can see their point of view stating that, hey, the board should have made this decision because it is a monetary decision that could affect the customer base. I realize that, and I can accept that. So anyway, we're here to discuss the rest of that. Lastly, the contract itself was signed by the general manager and was put into action actually in what, February of 2020?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just dive on in to the report. There are many instances here where the grand jury makes some assumptions. For the most part, they're fairly correct. There's some things that I don't think we see exactly the way they do. For instance, and I'm going to defer this a little bit to Dustin. For instance, the grand jury says that they don't think this is the appropriate application of Proposition 218.
Oh, right.
Staff actually saw it the other way around, in that we were being as transparent as possible to say, hey, only the folks paying for this service are the only ones being charged for it. Absorbing these rates into the entire district would pass the cost to everybody. I think where the grand jury deviates a little bit from that is they mention in here multiple times that the district should investigate absorbing these costs, but we're a nonprofit agency. So if we absorb the costs, all we're doing is charging somebody else. That's the way I see it. I mean, maybe I'm in error, but I do believe their view on that is a little different from staff. Okay, fair enough. But Their interpretation of Proposition 218 is this is not a property-related fee.
I would disagree with that. If, ultimately, I'm jumping way ahead here, but ultimately, if the board wants to take a different path here with these fees, you're fortunate in that you have non-218 revenue, such as hydro or property taxes or whatever, that you could pull from. But to color water rate fee revenue as the source of that funding for this program, I think would be stretching Proposition 218. And I will remind the board that there is currently a class action lawsuit in which the district is named. It doesn't relate to this specific issue, but it's a related issue related to fire hydrants. And you know, if you were to read that complaint, it's not that much of a leap to substitute fire hydrants for paymentus or a payment type service. So, you know, I guess I would respectfully disagree on this particular point.
Okay, so there are those topics. They also touched on the state and county mandated fees that we have placed in our billing. So a little background on that. The district used to, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, used to call these fees out separately, much like we're doing now. We got away from that for a while and just folded it into our general fees, and you didn't see it pulled out separately. But in the last rate setting process, we decided to pull it out because regulatory fees are increasing at a nearly exponential rate. And we felt it's a bit unfair to just classify it as NID's increasing rates again. Yes, we are, but a portion of these rates are due to regulatory fees outside of our control.
Like gas taxes.
Exactly. So we pulled it out separately so that folks could be aware that not all of this is just NID. So the grand jury highlighted that. They did say in the report that they were they got the nexus. They were unable, however, to verify the amount is appropriate. And I can see why. They'd have to dig through our budget in some detail to figure out if that amount is appropriate. So that's the other issue they brought up. So the report itself came back with, what is it, 10 or 11 findings? 11. Thank you. And then, what? 3, 4, 5 recommendations. So I can do two ways here. We can just open it up for questions right now, or I can read through the recommendations and our proposed responses, and we can go through the questions as we go through those if you'd like. I don't know if you have a preference. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for that background. Just a couple questions I want to talk about. So you had mentioned that Data Pros had said that there would be a setup fee, and then there would also be a transaction fee. Did you do a cost benefit to say, well, if we put just a little bit money up front, and then it would be just a nominal or very minimal, and that would apply to anybody in the district that wanted to pay their bill using it, versus only the people paying, you know? Did you look and see was the setup cost exorbitant and then the transaction fee comparable?
I do. The analysis showed that by picking paymentus, we saved the district and essentially ratepayers $26,000 in setup fees. But to your point, if the merchant fees were cheaper with Data Pros, we could have saved those users of the credit card a little money in that manner. The problem with that is now you're not saving everybody the same amount, right?
It would maybe highly mechanize the process to where you would be dealing with the paper checks and all of that. It would have been, I think in the long run, to have more people paying electronically saves staff time on this end moving.
So Paymentus offers all of that as well. They're doing all of the background work for us. And so essentially they were offering the same package with less setup cost to the district. That's really what
Data Pros would have been $3.75 per $1,000 as well.
If I recall, they were $3.25 per transaction.
That was my question.
But again, the district would have absorbed the setup cost. We never receive any of those transaction fees.
Right.
They are separated out before the district receives the funds.
So I was just curious if there was that analysis done to see, maybe a little bit of money up front that could be recouped. So that was one of that. And then the next thing, they noted on their page 18 about the state and federal fees. It says that when they requested the documents detailing the regulatory fees, rather than giving them the invoices or the direct billings from state and federal agencies, we refer them to our budget.
Yes.
Why wouldn't we just give them our invoices or the bills of send us?
Because that's how the fee was developed in the rate setting process. We took all of I don't remember the exact budget category, 525. Anyway, the state and county mandated fees, we took them out of the water budget, and any other agencies within the district that are paying those fees, we took the total of all that and divided it by the number of customers. It was as simple as that. So it is not based on the actual every single invoice calculation. It is based on our budget. And that's why we directed them that way. And I should add, and we'll get into that when I answer these recommendations, that fair enough, we hear you, and yes, it's complicated, and maybe that's something we address as we move into our next cost of service study. So if you'd like, I can jump into these and we can.
Yeah, that'd be great. That answers my
Well,
question.
I actually have some other questions before we get into the findings.
Mhm.
Is this a good time?
That's a good time.
Thank you. So now that we have the Paymentus system, are we now kind of hostage to that in the event that we wanted to make a change at the end of the term of the agreement? In other words, all the internal workings that were created to, do this exchange of funds, is this some kind of proprietary thing that Paymentus has? Or if we wanted to choose another provider, it would just easily transition over?
Great question. The answer is no, it's not proprietary, and we can switch or cancel the contract per the contract details whenever we want. They did promise us that they would be willing to reopen this or renegotiate the fees if they weren't appropriate, but we can tell you that we get monthly reports from them, and so far to date, I don't think they're making money hand over fist. In fact, to this point, it's only been $18,000, and that's with them doing all the background work since this program's been established.
Okay,
We have also investigated with them if their software and their program will fold into our new ERP system, and the answer is yes. They've worked with Tyler and Venus and all that previously as well, so that was an added bonus.
Okay. And then, I didn't see a termination clause anywhere. I read this like 14 times. And Dustin has always said, oh, we always have termination clauses. Could you show me where the termination clause is in this?
So this agreement, I don't think crossed my desk.
It was Mr. McClure.
Was it?
Yes.
So if you look at page 6 of 8,
Of the contract?
second to last page.
Of the actual agreement?
So yes, this is Paymentus's
Yes.
agreement.
Yeah, I read it.
Occasionally, vendors will insist on, rather than our template agreement, we use
Right,
theirs.
of course, yeah.
So their template agreement has a term of 5 years.
Right.
And then there's, 9.2 and 9.3 talks about events that occur upon termination or earlier termination.
But there's no early out that I could see.
Not that I'm seeing.
Okay, that's what I wanted to confirm. I did not think there was. So if we wanted to make a change, we'd have to wait for the end of the term.
I would think so.
You think so? Okay,
We
and
started
then,
this on 19.
Yes. That's when the agreement was signed. The actual implementation of it
Wasn't
until February. But I think the agreement date would be the trigger.
Is your understanding of the term different?
because you said we could terminate, and I didn't see that in the agreement.
So it's 9.3, but it's not a guarantee, right? It says upon termination of this agreement, parties agree to cooperate with one another to ensure that all payments are accounted for and refundable transactions have been completed.
Right, but that is not a termination
No, fair enough.
ability. And then, then the other thing that was troubling for me is that this has an automatic, an auto renewal.
Yeah.
And that was troubling too. It's like, well, wait a minute, I would never, ever, as a board member, have agreed to an automatic renewal and would always have wanted an ability to change horses if we needed to terminate the agreement with a reasonable notice, even if it's, 3 months, 6 months, whatever.
Yeah.
And so that was really, Dustin, for you is, we've got auto renewal and no ability to get out of this. But the other side of that is I also don't see any termination penalties. Do you see that? There's also none of that in here.
Usually I'm making a big assumption here, but usually with vendors like this that are large, that deal a lot with public agencies, they're pretty flexible on this type of stuff. They don't want to tarnish a reputation. So if, I also don't want to get ahead of the board, but if it's 2023 or 2024, we're still in the midst of the term, what appears to be the term, and the board wants to go a different way, I think we can have a discussion with them. I'd be pretty confident that we can come to some kind of solution.
So I can add to that. So
Yeah.
verbally, there was lots of promises that are not necessarily in writing. But I can tell you that in our workings with them, they have been backing up those promises. In fact, we had already started discussions with them prior to this grand jury report about, hey, can we switch the fee? That the $3.75 per 1,000 isn't really working that well for us. Can we switch to a percentage fee? They were open to those discussions, but they did find some regulatory restrictions that say that because we're a governmental agency, that's not necessarily allowed by us by the merchant laws. However, they were willing to explore other options with us, including if the district or the board should recommend that we start absorbing these fees, they were willing to explore discounts for the district because we would be a governmental agency, we would be absorbing the fees, they may be able to offer us a cheaper rate. So they're very, as Dustin said, flexible and steady so far. Now, granted, the black and white language may not support you, we're just going to terminate it.
Right, and so that was kind of surprising, really, that we did not have either of those provisions in there. But, and so lastly, it seemed to me that $3.75 or whatever is excessive. I use online to pay everything that I do. And if I use a credit card, I'm not charged anything, almost anywhere. And so I get why people would be grumpy about this. And so I'm wondering what our options are with regard to those fees. Are we able to go back and negotiate and say, hey, you know what, we had this grand jury report, blah, 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 this is looking a little excessive. What can you guys do for us here? And then there's an idea of the district sharing in the fee, but then I'm hearing the 218 thing.
So I hear you, and yes, we have already reached out to them and informed them of the grand jury report. I don't know how open they'd be to reducing the fee, especially given they really haven't made much money on this deal.
And do they have an escalation clause that makes the fee go up in time over the 5-year period? I didn't see that either.
It appears to be at page 2 of 8, yeah.
Oh, they do have, okay.
By not more than 5%.
Once every year.
Compensation, no service fee. I missed it then. So you're saying they could increase by 5% annually?
Once every 12 months on the anniversary of the effective date. The assumptions vary by more than 5%.
So, regardless to say, we have opened that door and we'll continue discussions with them, and obviously at the board, we'll keep you informed of where we're headed and all those discussions. But I think the Proposition 218 is a challenging one, and I only brought that up to try to inform the board why we made the decision we did. But if the board is wanting to go a different route in which some of these fees are absorbed, maybe through the utilizations of the hydro fund, I'm all for it. Honestly, the more people I can get paying by credit card,
Right.
burden it is on us.
Right, I mean, it reduces staff time, it seems like there's efficiencies there that aren't necessarily really easy to calculate, but we all know that they're there.
Yes, it's a win-win, it truly
Yeah.
is. But again, we went down this path trying to be as transparent and trying to keep cost of service related to only what you were utilizing. And that's why we came up with this concept.
I think this might have been a legacy agreement, I mean, to have not come before the board in anything other than, oh, by the way, this is what we're doing, was probably not the best, given that it did impact our ratepayers in hindsight.
Yeah, but.
If I had been on the board, I mean, I remember being on the board, like, at one of the last meetings where this
Yeah.
was discussed, and I remember saying, that's a lot of money. And, you know, and by that time, stone had been cast, you know.
You mean the service fee?
Yeah, the service fee.
375 is a lot of money.
Yeah,
Well, remember, it is, I mean.
I know, it was offsetting the
but
setup.
It is within, I mean, it's a zero cost to the district.
Understood.
Our
I know.
contracting authority within staff authorizations set a zero price tag
I get
for the
it.
district.
I get it.
To
I mean, I think
enter
it was
into contract?
the best decision you had at the time, lacking any other board
Hindsight,
input.
perhaps?
In hindsight,
Seeing
that's
some
all.
of the reporting, then perhaps.
Well, the labor savings is.
And Chip, you just, no, I just want to say personally to you and Aurora, I'm not criticizing you, your team, personally, anything. But in hindsight, it would have been better to have had this come before the board and had this more of an open discussion and so on, because it doesn't seem like much to some people, but for some people it's a lot. And if I had to pay $3.75 for every electronic transaction I did, it would be terrible.
Well,
Yes.
per thousand.
It is per thousand.
It is per thousand.
I will just
Yeah.
spend a minute on devil's advocate there.
Okay, go ahead.
Because we do have staff level authorizations for entering into contracts and spending district monies per budget.
No, I know.
Every one of those dollars that we enter into a contract has some implication on a customer's rate and their monthly bill, whether they pay into a $3.75 transactional cost or whether they pay a $80 a month water bill. That money goes into what eventually becomes a contract one way or shape or form or another, whether it's a pipeline installation or a whatever.
Yeah.
Any of those other maintenance activity.
This is different, though. This isn't maintenance. This is,
Fair enough,
this is
but-
a whole different direction of a direct cost.
Labor savings.
It's maintenance of our accounts.
Anyway.
I will say, we did bring it to the committee level and we did bring it to the board, but I totally hear you. In the future, things like this will come to the board level to have an open and honest discussion. I
So-
agree.
Okay, well, thank you, and I'm interested in hearing how we go forward from here.
Okay.
But that's it.
Director Hall.
Thank you. I do see things a little differently, actually quite a bit differently. I recently noticed on my telephone bill a charge for $7.95 if I received and paid by mail. Okay, so if I get a paper bill versus having an online transaction where I'm doing auto bill pay.
Right.
So I think that, to me, this is about choice. And so people have a choice to do an automatic bank transfer, no charge at all. They have a choice of writing a check. They have a choice of using Paymentus and paying a fee. If we only had one option for every customer, then I'm not sure I would even change my opinion, but the fact of the matter is people do have a choice. And if you object, just like I object to $7.95 on my phone bill, well, you bet your butt, I was on the phone, get me on that auto system, So that point made. The other thing is, I want within the parameters of the guidelines we set for the management to be able to make decisions like this. I think that, to me, maybe a misstep was not having legal counsel look at a contract. But, I think you made really a good decision on behalf of both the customers. You added a convenience factor. As I calculated it, was something around 15% of customers are taking advantage of this option. So you still have to maintain the whole infrastructure pretty much of what exists for all the other payment types. So so I don't see, and workload for your customer service staff, I'm sure is more multidimensional than just processing a bill. And so I think I don't think that we as a board can appreciate how that relates to actual FTE potential savings. So, but I support you being able to, that, in my opinion, to me, this is a good example of something that I would trust the management team to make an informed decision about. I mean, I'm not averse to having a board discussion, but to me, there was no cost to the district. Customers had other options, and so I kind of like, okay.
Director Hull, if I can just, what I heard earlier is it did go through someone in my office. It just didn't touch my desk.
Okay.
So there was, I want to make sure, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, you're right.
That's my fault, because there needs to be better communication. I need to be made aware that something's being reviewed, and then they need to know my standard concerns.
An hour.
You reminded me of.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Our collective concern.
No, had this touched my desk, I would have gone right to the termination section.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing this too long. Yes, it looks great, the decision is sound, let's go. But 3 years was a long time. 5 years was an even longer time. And the priorities of the board can change. A lot of things can change. So I like to see flexibility in these types of arrangements. So.
Well, and it Karen, to your point, it reduces the ability of competition within providers. So what these folks have is a 5-year deal with automatic 3-year extensions, right? And I'm just speaking of.
But don't we have a right to, when it's up for renewal, we have the ability to say we're not auto.
We do, but that means somebody has to
Be reading the contract.
administering the contract at the time. And it doesn't say how soon, it doesn't say we're going to notify you that now there's not a notification provision. I mean, I'm in the weeds around this, but my point is that, golly, 5 years is a long time, and we are moving at light speed in this arena, in the space of payment processing and all of those kinds of things. And that we could probably get a better deal somewhere else within 3 years, maybe. Maybe not, but it's like having the option as a public agency so that we're not just granting somebody an 8-year deal, which this could have been had this not come to us. So that's.
If I may?
Yeah.
I am administering the contract.
Oh, you are?
I am
Okay.
monitoring it. I look at the reports on a regular basis.
Great.
Also, a couple things that I heard, there was mention of the district sharing in the cost. In all of our research, there is no sharing component. It's either customer paid or district paid.
Okay.
So I think as we move forward, that's important to keep in mind. And I'm sorry, I have one more point, now it's gone.
That's okay, thank you for that.
So, well, and it is a monthly occurrence, and Aurora and her team are, this is one of our 5, I think, ways to pay a bill. You can also walk in and make payments.
No, I agree
So,
with you, Karen, about having other options. I'm really more focused on this
Contract, yeah.
My
So-
other point was labor savings. While absolutely in many cases there is a savings,
Yes.
many customers don't want to deal with either the online credit card option or the IVR, which is
Mhm.
automatic phone service, the recorded phone service. They want one of our customer service agents to assist them. So it's not always a savings. In many cases, and those calls are actually some of our longer calls.
I'll bet.
And we discourage customers as much as possible because of our call recording and, but some customers are insistent, no, I want you to help me with this.
Yeah.
Cool.
Wow.
Then Director Johansson.
Thanks. So it's not the ideal agreement, but it's not like a timeshare.
Right.
We can, it's not into perpetuity.
So I want to.
But I got another, so my question is, did the grand jury call you for input at all, for
Yeah, were
background?
you tipped off?
I don't think we can
That's
discuss that.
confidential or not?
Yeah,
It's all confidential.
You can say whether you were contacted or just don't go into the specifics.
Okay, yes.
Okay, good.
And so was
Oh, and you were too. Oh.
So I will say, my appreciation to the grand jury, that is a bit of a thankless job. But I think, we'll respond as we're required to. I know you're gonna get into that.
Yeah.
But this is also a really nice opportunity they have presented us an opportunity to have a discussion with a vendor. To
Right, that's right.
maybe make some changes here.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll add to that, and there are parts in here where they actually say they understand, and they said they have reached out to us, and customer service was always professional, always straightforward and upfront, and I think that's awesome.
Because we have a great team.
Now, if we can inform them and answer their questions, I think we'll go a little bit further down the road. And again, if this leads to some sort of district-funded option, I'm all for it.
So,
Yeah, and so the other part of that is, as Dustin has mentioned, so let's assume the district takes on that obligation. Currently, I believe that ends up being $91,000 in fees, is that correct? I'm the way back machine.
Well, how
does
can
not
it be
work.
18,000 that
So
you
that's
said they're not
their
making
profit.
money?
And
Oh.
we're doing the background stuff. If the district takes this over, we'll be absorbing all the merchant fees and all of that stuff essentially.
So we can shop for merchant fees with our bankers and so on.
Well, I'll tell you, Wells Fargo wasn't cheaper.
Of course, we knew that, that's why we wanted to get rid of Wells Fargo.
Anyway, the point I wanted to make is, if the district absorbs the fee, fine, and if we use hydro funds, fine, may pass Prop 218, but essentially, that takes away from the supplemental income you're distributing throughout the entire customer base to keep rates down.
Mhm.
That's,
That's a good point.
So Chip,
we're
you want to go
not,
through?
we're not making money on this stuff.
One affects the other.
Chip, you want to run through the findings? And
Okay.
And I think
Okay.
the idea here, if I may, just sort of setting for the next meeting, is that, because this is a report from the grand jury that came to the board. We were just collecting the information, open discussion, that was one of the recommendations, and then coming back with, next meeting, what we believe would probably be the responses from the board.
Okay.
We would seek the board's approval of that written response.
Absolutely. That's what the next meeting would be. So this is just getting your understanding of what we believe a response probably can be, but then we have the final responses next meeting.
Okay. So, just to set the table a little bit, so the grand jury report itself dictated how they would like a response back to them, and essentially they want to keep it short, which is cool.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. So first I'll start with the findings. Finding number 1, many customers use checks or bank drafts to pay their NID bills instead of credit or debit cards, in part because of the additional charges NID passes on to its customers. We partially agree, NID doesn't, this is our answer. We partially agree NID does not question why people choose one payment over the other. Many that use checks or bank drafts do so out of habit or because they prefer these payment methods.
And I agree.
I found that statement a little bit leading, but that's okay. So that's one of our proposed
How do they know that one?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree. How do they know that?
Where's the numbers
Right.
that they come up with that one? That's what I want.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, guys.
I'm not the only one who read it that way then.
Wow.
Okay.
Getting on the fighting side of you.
Finding number 2.
Yeah.
It is difficult to find complete information about payment types and fees on the NID website. Our response is, we agree. However, NID has developed a new webpage with more emphasis on paying your bill. We've kind of already addressed this, just the timing didn't work out that well. Okay, finding number 3, NID charges to consumers for using credit and debit cards are unusual among water districts surveyed and among other non-water utilities. For-profit businesses generally do not pass along the fees of electronic payments either. Our response is, we partially agree. Charges to consumers for credit cards are not unusual among government agencies, just aren't. However, NID agrees that most private agencies do not pass along the fees for electronic payments. This may be due to the fact that they do not have to abide by Prop 218.
Right.
So, we did reach out to many of the neighboring water utilities, and they're correct. Many water agencies don't pass this fee along, and they absorb it, and they will be glad to tell you that. I don't know how they pass Prop 218 muster, but that's just what they do. So,
It's under the radar.
it is under the radar. Okay. Finding number 4, many water districts view the use of electronic payments as a cost of doing business rather than classifying them as a property-related fee as Proposition 218. I just mentioned this. We agree, as stated in the grand jury report, there is no consensus as to which fees meet this definition. Further, NID was attempting to be as transparent as possible about the actual cost of service. That's our response. Finding number 5. While NID relies upon Proposition 218 as a rationale for charging electronic processing fees to customers, it does not fully implement the spirit of proportional charges. As implemented, electronic payment fees paid by approximately 80% of NID's treated water customers offset the cost for the other 20% who use the service. We partially agree. NID's implementation fully supports Proposition 218 by not charging extra fees to customers who do not elect to use credit card payments. NID agrees that those who are using the service are sharing in the cost. So in other words, those that elect to use a credit card, they're all paying a postage stamp rate. But those who are electing not to pay by a credit card are not paying anything extra.
That seems wise.
Right.
Finding number 6, the jury was unable to find a board-level discussion or approval to charge customers for electronic payments. We agree. This is a voluntary service that does not come at a cost to the district, and because our customers do not have to use the service, the contract did not go before the board. The board members were, however, informed on a monthly basis of the progress. That's our proposed response there. So I got to back up on that one. If we write these answers from a board perspective, I may have to change that response a little bit. We'll come back to the slide to wordsmith it a little bit. Okay, finding number 7. There was no public discussion at the board level about the consumer fees being charged by Paymentus. Rather, the decision was made by non-elected NID officials. We partially agree. The electronic payments were discussed regularly at the Water Hydroelectric Operations Committee meetings and a number of times at the full board level. The final contract authorization and execution was conducted at the general manager level. He was the signature. Okay, finding number 8. The decision to select Paymentus was primarily focused on the cost to the district rather than the cost to the consumer. We agree. However, as a nonprofit organization, any cost to the district would have been passed along to the ratepayer.
Right.
That's a hard one to understand.
Apparently. Yeah. Okay. Finding number 9. Many consumers are unaware that they can switch to paperless billing. We agree. However, our new webpage is going to help with some of that. And we'll work on some of the details on getting that information out there. Finding number 10, there is no easy-to-access detail that supports the additional $1.90 reporting fee charged to water consumers each month by NID. While the jury doesn't have a reason to doubt its validity, it also couldn't verify the details that led to the charge. We agree. This came out of the last rate-setting process and is simply a total cost of the regulatory fee divided by the number of customers. The calculation stems from multiple pages in the budget and may be hard to track.
But, so you collected $450,000 in 2019?
Yeah.
To pay close to $400,000 in regulatory fees?
Yeah.
Plus we had expenses to account for those fees.
Plus the fees have gone up since, and so we're not collecting the total amount.
So isn't that the detail they're looking for? This should be. Thanks.
Finding 11, there is no documented formal customer complaint process in place that allows for complaints to be monitored, resolved, and collectively reported to NID management or the elected board of directors. We agree. There'll be more information on this in the recommendations. Okay, recommendations. Recommendation number 1, NID should list all payment types along with associated fees on its website and in a place that is easy for customers to view. Our response is, the recommendation has already been implemented with the launch of a new web page. The product will continue to be refined over time, meaning the web page. I can change that to say web page. Okay. Recommendation number 2, the elected NID board members should have a public discussion about absorbing the cost of electronic payments for their customers, allowing usage of credit or debit cards without an additional fee to customers. Our response is, we agree, the board has begun those discussions at the May 26th board meeting and will continue to explore the legal options. I mean, have a few years apparently to hammer out the details. Okay, so recommendation number 3, NID should provide frequent and detailed communications to customers about their ability to convert to paperless billing both on its website and in the paper bills. Our response is the recommendation has already been implemented on the district's new webpage, and additional details are being provided in the monthly billing. The district will continue to periodically remind customers about the paperless option. Recommendation number 4, NID should include a complete listing of the $1.90 regulatory fees that are included in the amount charged to customers in the cost of service study. The public should be able to see the individual fees by type, the total of all fees, and the number of customers estimated to share in the responsibility for the fee. Our response is this recommendation will be addressed in the ongoing rate setting discussions for 2021. Recommendation number 5, NID should adopt a formal documented process for collecting, resolving, and reporting customer complaints. The response is the district has a complaint process. However, per the recommendation, the process will be documented and formalized into a written policy. We have a process we follow. It's well known. It gets escalated up through the chain, but I agree with them. It is not a policy or a written documented procedure.
It's not documented, yeah. Right.
So that's trying to be as brief as possible, but answer all of their questions and concerns. Am I hearing any concerns or deviations from those responses?
I think you did a good job.
Great job.
Response.
Great job.
All right. With
Thank
that,
you.
we will refine it a little bit, bring it back to the board for a response. An official response is not due till July 3rd.
Yeah.
Do we need public comment? Okay. Thank you, Chip. Thank you, Aurora. Is there any member of the public like to comment on this update on the grand jury report, NID billing and payment fees? If you'd like to comment, start on your phone. Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We ready for closed session?
Yes, sir.
We take public comment on, it's only the one closed
It's only
session
the
item.
first closed session item.
We're not going to do this. We're going to get back to that.
Are there,
Got me all confused. So, at this time, we're going to move on to closed session item, time certain, time uncertain, as Chip said. Existing litigation. Is there any public comment on this item before we go into closed session?
This is the State Water Resource Control Board versus Federal Energy Regulatory Commission matter in the Ninth Circuit.
Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, at this time, we will close the open session, open the closed session, and see you afterwards.
Wait,
What?
will there be
Oh,
report out?
maybe report out.
The expected report out on this item is just that direction was given to legal counsel.
Direction given to legal counsel.
And do we have a time certain of when we will pick up the open session?
we don't.
We have warrants. We have,
Well, there's a consultant, I think, waiting.
Yeah, and then we've got
We have,
GM's report, board's report.
yep,
So we got a couple other items to cover. I don't know, maybe
At least an
hour
more
at
than
least.
two?
I'm
Probably
more than an hour.
I don't think more than 2,
Yeah, I would say an hour to no more than 2.
hour and a
Be my
half
guess.
to split the baby.
We have lunch.
Yeah, so-
And we're gonna eat while we talk.
Well, I was just gonna say, for those who are listening.
Some people can.
It might be useful to say our goal or expected time to go back into open session is
1:30.
1:30.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, now can I close the open session?
Yes, you can.
Open session closed.
And we are now live.
Okay, welcome back to the ID Board of Directors meeting. We're going to resume the general orders, general order number 6, warrants and projects and facilities, and Marvin is here to do that.
Good afternoon, Board, members of the public, and staff. These are the warrants as well as the project facilities and investment report. And something, and I don't have anything unusual to point out on the reports. So I don't know if there are any questions. I can take any questions.
I have 3 questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, so on page 20 of 51, where you say the GM recruitment service was paid to something called GVP Ventures. That was not the consultant, the name of the consultant group that we hired. So I was curious, was this
That is a good question.
in error or?
No, it was, they're doing business as.
It's a DBA?
Yeah.
I kind of thought that
Yeah.
might be, but I needed to ask.
Yep, that's exactly right. I had that question when it
came
through.
Okay.
Well,
All right,
no,
thank you.
they are DBA as.
Okay.
Bob, somebody.
Bob Moore? Or,
Bob Murphy.
You know, I never got it right, Chris.
Bob Murray.
Bob Murray and it
Gary
was
Phillips.
Gary
Bob-
Phillips. and
Bob
GVP. Yeah, it was probably Gary Phillips.
We're always calling him Bob.
I know.
Maybe, doing the, maybe.
Okay, thank you. My second question, to just keep moving through, is then on page 22 of 51, from HDR actually, the hydraulic physical modeling for the Scotts Flat spillway repair. So is this complete? Do we know? Greg might know. And then do we get to see it? I mean, that was the thing. I really wanted to see it.
You will see a video.
From Canada.
You will see a video. You can't bring, they won't bring it down from Canada. It's not complete. They've run some
Kind of a
modeling.
little off warrant question,
They've run
but,
some modeling, and I know that they're adjusting and making adjustments. So
okay.
it's still ongoing.
Contract, that seems like, that's pretty much almost all of the money.
I was guessing it had to be pretty close.
125,000,
That's 300,000.
It was
345 or something.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't, question whether or not we have additional money in the.
Yeah, how close to being done are we?
How close are we, and when do we expect it?
And then my last question is, which I seem to always have this question about Zanjero. This is on page 50. So there was 2 warrants for a total of $29,000, which just sort of blew me out. How many hours does that represent? And, I mean, presumably these are contracts we've all agreed to, I get it. But I just kind of wanted to point out for everybody, once again, we use this firm a lot, and it's very expensive.
Which page you on?
Page 50, bottom of the page, Zanjero.
51?
Well, yeah, it almost feels like this person is staff, and we're paying these really high consultant fees. It looks like this person's working on the urban.
So he's doing two products for us at the moment.
Right.
One is the implementation support for the CMMS process. And then he's also doing our urban water management plan.
This Jim?
Correct.
$30,000
His team.
That's a lot of money.
Well, that's why I asked, I would like to understand how many hours of work does that represent, because
I can get that for you.
it gets to the question of, golly, maybe we should just have a staff person. I mean, because these bills, when they come through, are all, in the 20 to 30,000 a month for this particular consultant.
Yeah.
And it just seems crazy amount of money.
I understand.
We can hire somebody with the,
Well, that's what it's just a question.
I can get the number of hours, but just to let you know, I mean, I'm not, I don't know off the top of my head what the number of hours are, but these are 2 different projects that firm is working on.
I understand, they are 2, they're 2, but.
And as we talked about before, the urban management plan, we've been going pretty heavy into that in the last just 2 months, so. There's been a lot of activity. I can't speak for the CMMS project. That's mostly.
Maybe that's why, maybe the CMMS project is why we're behind on our urban. water management project.
Well, the other question then.
No, we're not behind on the urban water management.
No, we're not.
We're fine on that, and we're doing fine on the other. I will find out for you the hours and figure out what that is, but.
Okay, so then, if you don't mind, and then if you look at, on the project and facility balances, and I think this is page 2 of 10, and it says financial systems implementation, which I presume tracks to the CMMS implementation. And it shows that for the month of May, we spent $36,000, and March 70, and February 63, and so on. And so if we spent 36 in May, and we paid Zanjero 12, who, you know, like.
So there's the ERP system that's running in coordination with this. Marvin, is that the same FATAR number?
It's the same FATAR, but it's a different vendor.
It's a different consultant.
Yeah, so you could have.
There are two parallel systems going at the same time.
You can have.
ERP and there's the CMMS.
Okay.
They're under the same project.
They're under the
code.
same financial
Yeah,
systems
correct.
implementation.
So they were, it appears that, if, Marvin, do these numbers, yeah, 12,500 for that project there. If we looked and saw the other vendor, you'd probably make up that difference.
Yeah,
Okay.
Tyler is the other vendor as well as Panorama. So-
Oh, okay.
so-
Yeah.
Right. Well, I just kind of want to highlight that, so thank you.
But
And-
Rick,
Yeah.
heck, your comments are correct. I mean, a lot of entities actually hire staff to do these implementations. They do. They hire staff to do the implementations, like 2-3 year part-time staff to do it.
Right.
But it's still not cheap because.
Still not cheap, but, man, this is like, if we saw what this company has been paid over since my tenure in the last 3 years, it's an extraordinary amount of money.
But I think we're gonna reap the benefits for these systems, you know, far into the future. I know we're gonna reap them. You know, as our processes get automated, people leave, you ain't got a backfill.
Right.
Those things are gonna happen.
I think your question is specifically about the vendor.
Yeah, about this particular
Not
vendor,
necessarily
because
about-
this vendor is doing, you know, writing the raw water master plan over here and doing financial systems backup over here, and
The hydro work over there.
And one person can do all of that? I mean,
It's
and,
not one person, it's
It's
an
not?
organization. It's a
oh, it is,
company.
okay, I just
Yes.
still thought it was one person.
I don't know how many people, but I know there's a team there.
There's a team,
There's
okay.
it's a consultant firm.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's all. I'm done. I just wanted to have everybody look at how much money we are spending with that particular consultant firm on a monthly.
Are we still on track for the end of the year to get this online?
This year?
We're gonna bring an update in June.
We're gonna bring an update in June. With that, we're gonna have.
Getting feedback.
Just 1 second.
Okay, in June, you're gonna bring that.
The update.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have a full overview in June of the project.
Okay, all right. Marvin, I don't have a specific question about the warrants, but, what's the status of the audited financials of CAFR? I mean, it says we're supposed to have it, April through June, the auditor should complete the audit, and early July, we should have it presented to the board.
Right now, we are still on pace to have it brought in July, probably maybe the second meeting, but it's still on pace.
Okay,
So
good,
the audit is still on pace.
okay.
I don't know about, like I said, I don't know about the first meeting, but it's still on pace. I checked with Debbie, and she says, we're still pushing to get it in July before the board.
Okay, that's good, thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, thank you.
Entertain a motion? Oh, no, wait, public comment, I always forget that. Is there any public comment on the warrants for today? If you'd like to comment, start on your phone. Seeing none, did you want to make a motion?
I will
again?
make a motion to accept the warrant projects and facilities we didn't have any.
Yeah, it was a report. I had nothing to report.
Okay, cool. So, I'm making that motion to approve the warrants, projects, and facilities investment report.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second. Yeah.
Mr. Hanson?
Rich? Any further discussion by the board, from the board? Madam Secretary, you call the roll, please.
Division 1,
Aye.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 4. Aye. Division 2.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much, Marvin.
Thanks, Marvin.
See you soon, Marvin. Okay, interim general manager's report.
Hey, good afternoon. A few things to update you on. In terms of some follow-up from last board meeting, there were some warrant questions regarding costs at the Bear Valley Yard up at, for the South Yuba Canal. So there was 2 expenses. One was for $18,259, and that went to Pacific Gas and Electric, and this was the requirement to relocate their overhead power lines and facilities to an underground system, improving the safety for that yard in the future and allowing us to take care of what we need to do. There was like a hole, I think, directly in the center with overhead power lines going through, so they took that out. You'd think because it was their property in advance, they would kind of throw us a bone, but they didn't.
Yeah, you would think.
No. So they billed us for that, and that's what that is. The other is for $14,117, and this is for new services. This is required to establish new power and gas services once we get the yard up and going. And again, this was part of a kind of that long hit list that we talked about. I think it was last year at some point in terms of the activities that we're doing, and we're slowly eking into them. No, I don't think we did them specifically in the last month. I remember Bob said that there was no work that we did, and these bills were back in, well, the check date was in April, but the invoice came, I think, in February. It just took a minute to process them out. So the second part of that question, so those are just sort of activities that we've identified that need to happen if we want that yard to be a facility for us to be able to utilize it and not run into power lines and have appropriate activities at the facility there. The other part of the question was, why does it come out of the water budget, right? And I would like to request that we have that conversation perhaps at a future board meeting, or at a budget meeting coming up in 2022. This is just how we budgeted this corporation yard for the Bear Valley area. We've just budgeted it through the maintenance department, right? We could probably have a deeper conversation about that as we get into budget, as should Hydro be budgeting this and carrying that out? Should we do a transfer of funding over the years, over the last couple of years that we've been doing stuff? So I don't have an exact policy answer for you on that right now. It's just been practice that we've been budgeting it within the maintenance department over the last 3 or 4 years that we've been working on it. So that's where it's at.
I have some questions. I just happened to drive up there last week to look at the Bear Valley and the Bear Yard and just to see what it looked like. And right next door is the PG&E yard. And so they have a great big yard right there. Did we look at maybe sharing some of that facilities? Because now we're building a whole exactly the same thing right next door.
I don't have that answer either.
It's sharing that? I mean, and then also we have a Bear Valley house right there. There's a house right across the street from that we have. And we're building the sleeping quarters and everything in this house, in this place. Couldn't we utilize an existing structure that's right across the street for some of the admin or the office space or the kitchenette, or, isn't that all just right across, and we're building brand new right there as well?
Airbnb?
I think that perhaps that's a better question for a longer duration of time. I don't have those answers. They're good questions, and I think that, when we define the purpose of this yard, we can talk about that.
Hopefully we define the purpose before we.
Yeah, I thought.
No, I'm sorry, we have, but you haven't really heard it in the M&R, or in the M&R committee.
True.
We're talking
I've never heard any of the previous background.
I know.
Nothing looked at it going, wow.
That concept to the board again, and probably discuss who's responsible for it, what its relationship is with the house, why we, have that place, and why we needed this yard, what the purpose of it is. I just don't have that answer.
Yeah, I'd like to bring it for discussion before we pour a whole boatload more money into it, just so we know what it is. And then it's,
Well, that yard, the house doesn't have, the purpose of the yard is to have yard, right? To store equipment and inside and outside
sure.
for ongoing operations of that canal. That little house that's over there does not have that.
Right, but we were making sleeping quarters and kitchenette, and we're making a,
Well, like a one.
Can
I hear what you're
stuck up
saying.
in the snow, I think, mainly.
There could be a benefit there for.
yeah. Anyways, I'm just, it was the first I really
Okay.
saw it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, then, wanted to update you on redistricting.
Yeah.
There's sort of you're hearing a lot in the world right now of redistricting and what it is. So as you know, we put a halt on our redistricting process last
2 years ago?
2 years ago?
Yeah,
Was it
2 years ago.
2019.
Was it 19?
Yep, it sure was.
Yeah.
It was the year before 2020,
Yeah.
so whatever you
Yeah. So from our consultant, Redistricting Partners, we reached out to them not long ago and said, what do you think is our best process forward here? Because our next election isn't until November of next year. And so we need to make sure that we've accomplished our redistricting activities prior to that. So what's our best foot forward? Based on COVID and what's being developed now and put in the street for data, they're saying that the cities and counties who have primary elections, they have a date of no later than December 15th of this year, 2021, to complete their redistricting process.
Right.
So there is a massive push right now for cities and municipalities and counties to do their process. It's not recommended we try to insert ourselves into that process because we don't have a primary. So we should hold off, and their feeling is that we don't participate in the spring. And the spring, we move our redistricting processes, so starting in January 2022 is when we should start looking at doing our redistricting. And our functional deadline will be set by the county registrar. So Nevada County Registrar will give us our deadline that we have to be done by. He believes it's likely to be around June 2022.
That's too late.
Yeah, because I hear it's like 120 days or something before the election, you have to have redistricting completed.
Again,
There's some code about it.
There's a lot of changes, there's a lot of, I think, catch-up that people are doing right now.
Well, and because of COVID and the census, that all got delayed.
Right.
Well,
The census is.
Yeah, I mean, so, just on the far end, he's saying, you're probably gonna want it done. The registrar's probably gonna make us have it done before June 2022. So that's a year from now that we need to start thinking about it. We probably won't start it, though, with the data that we're gonna need until probably January or February 2022. Just wanted to give you an update on that.
April 1st would be better
By April 1st.
instead of June. Just,
Oh, to be done.
whoever, for whoever's running, they need to.
to be done.
Yeah, to be done.
Fair enough.
yeah, it would be better, but
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just telling you what he thinks, what our consultant believes the registrar would say, you gotta have it done by June.
Right.
It doesn't mean we can't do it before that.
Good.
There's a number of days.
Yeah.
Do you see it as more minor tweaking or major shifts?
I think it's
Oh,
gonna be a
okay.
major shift.
Yeah,
It's been
it's
a
a-
while since NID's done a redistricting.
20 years.
That's why it came up, because the numbers put us over the threshold
Yeah, we're quite
the
a,
first time, yeah.
we're a bit out of
Out of whack, yes.
We're out of compliance.
I think it was out of whack in Laura's.
Yeah, it's way out of whack in my
Well,
doing.
yeah.
You're too big?
Well, and then also, you guys, this whole issue of, is Grass Valley gonna be in our
Right.
district boundaries, or are they not? And that's a whole core of population, do they get their own, is there a new director, or two new directors, or do we split territory? I mean, there's a lot that's gonna go into it.
Great question, a great
Yeah,
observation.
that's why that conversation is really important. We need to put that on the front burner.
Let's get it done.
Okay, so that's an update there. We're keeping an eye out for California and federal funds. Director Johansson had passed out an article here, and I gave that copy to all of you. There's a whole slew of potential money in the state's budget. There's also potential money from the federal budget and stimulus for water infrastructure improvements, disadvantaged communities, irrigation efficiencies, et cetera. So just want to let you know that we're taking a look at that, and we'll be bringing, hopefully, kind of keeping track of what is there and seeing where NID projects and programs can fit within that. We spoke about them a little bit this morning, so there's a lot in there. With that, I want to let you know, I also put this letter on your desk. This is a letter that's going to go out by the Western Water Coalition. We signed on to it in January, and we'll sign on to this one as well. It's just a re-up of support for Western agriculture, municipal, industrial, and rural water infrastructure from the federal government. So just want to let you know that we're going to sign on. NID is going to be a signatory to that as well.
The Western Water Storage Infrastructure Act.
Something like that.
Of 2016.
Sounds right. Guys, I told you about our new VoIP system. We experienced a little hiccup on that this morning, but I think overall it's been a really good opportunity and a good lift, kind of bringing NID's communication systems into the 21st century. So kudos to the IT team. They did a heavy lift on that for the last month or so, and it was quite a bit. So we've got our new little space age rocket sitting there, and I think over time it's going to work out really well.
Two comments on that?
Yes.
Our people can identify who's calling in.
Yes.
So it's no more anonymous. Number two, it's hard to dial a extension.
So there's been a little hiccups with the incoming phone calls and the switchboard, and I think we're working out fixes for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Extensions changed.
Some extensions changed.
Some of them
Well,
don't.
all extensions added a different number, so it's like a four-digit extension now instead of a 3.
Do we get a list of those?
Yeah. Sure.
That's a good idea.
We talked about Hemp Hill earlier. The comment period's closed, so we anticipate bringing that. I think Doug said July is kind of the process on bringing that public hearing to the table here. We talked about the urban water management plan. I don't need to update you on that. That process. Let's see. Last week we did a tour, Hydro and NESA and the watershed team did a tour with county and state Office of Emergency Services, as well as the county sheriff, and Truckee PUD came down to take a tour of our dam facilities, and they talked about evacuations, they talked about dam safety and communications and forest fuel reductions and wildfire considerations in our forested land. So they had a full day, and from what I understand, it was really well received, and staff did an amazing job. So kudos to them. We got a lot of good kudos for that. Thanks to OES for reaching out. We had it set a couple of different times throughout COVID, but we kept pushing it back.
So all of our dams and all of our facilities really don't have any impact on Placer County. There's no real need to coordinate with Placer County on any of this stuff. This is all Nevada County. Is that correct? No. Is Placer County there?
No. No, this was Nevada County, OES. Placer County has, we coordinate with Placer County all the time. We've got a Placer County hazard mitigation plan, which talks about some of our dams and mitigation measures. They have to do that. We're party to it because we're a special district. Same with Nevada County local hazard mitigation plan.
Or is there impact? Maybe there's no real impact to Placer County.
Well, they have
There are.
Yeah, the Bear Rivers that they do have.
Yeah, there are impacts if, it's the probable flood plain for Rollins and Combi. It's not astronomical, right? It's not like Nevada City or anything like that, but it's, there's an impact to Placer County for sure. This just happened to be coordination with Nevada County. I wanted to update you that we came last month, or I think think it was last month or last week, a $1.4 million grant proposal for Parker Ranch to do a forest fuel management project on that for Sierra Nevada Conservancy. We were rejected, so that is a sad turn of events, and we're really kind of disheartened about it.
Why were we rejected?
We were told that we didn't meet the full list of qualifications, specifically the fact that we didn't have our CAL FIRE exemption in hand, even though we are in the process of getting it by June 11th. And they had $40 million worth of applicants to the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, and they only had $20 million to distribute. We thought we thought our project scored really high. We thought it was a great project, and we're really kind of saddened. I'm not sure there was a local resident who sent out a communication to multiple agencies and a couple, I think, of board members regarding why spend money on a project that potentially could be inundated under a reservoir in the coming years. And so I don't know if that had anything to do with the decision.
I didn't see that. I didn't get it.
Can you circulate a copy of that?
No, I will. I can. Sure. It came to us from the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. It was forwarded to us and said, just to let you know, this is here. So, I don't know, but we lost out on that, and that's a shame, because that would have been a great aspect and a great project for the community of Lake of the Pines, all the Sierra, an amazing Colfax. I mean, we were crossing the Bear, going into Placer County and Nevada County, 700 and some odd acres.
Is there a resubmittal or a
Way
appeal?
to protest?
A protest or appeal?
No.
Once we get
Not
our,
that we know of.
okay.
So I'll be glad to forward you the communication that was sent out soon after the board approved that resolution for application.
Sure undercuts us, doesn't it?
Kind of did.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of fire hazard removal up at the campgrounds, a lot at Orchard Springs, that's been done, so that's really looking really good there. We're finding massive hazard trees all over the place as the upper division starts to warm up and we can get in there. I sent you a picture of a pretty good sized tree that just came down right on top of one of the picnic benches, and those things are massive.
Yep.
This is Jackson Meadows?
Oh, you got,
Yeah, that's Jackson Meadows.
you got another tree that's about ready to fall on some infrastructure.
I just got an email from,
There we go.
oh yeah, I just got an email from our gal in the forest, Mesa, and there's just, I mean, these things are coming up so fast, the dead and dying trees.
Yep.
They're really, we're in an area for a month and a half doing mastication, and we look back 4 weeks later, and there's another 15 trees.
Yep.
There's 16 right now standing at
It is
gate
so
2
dry.
near the bottom of the boat ramp that weren't there 6 months ago, 5 months ago.
We have a massive oak, beautiful oak,
So this is,
slowly dying.
yeah, this is happening fast, and
Actually.
just to let you know, I mean, these cost roughly a couple $1,000 per tree to remove and
Yeah.
chip or remove out of there. So, and they're in campgrounds. They're right over sleeping campers and people. We need to clean them up.
Yep.
Speaking of that, we're doing some work right now on thinning. I think it ends today or tomorrow. We closed the trail between gates 1 and 2. That's got flat for the last couple days. I think that's all I got.
Good project.
Ongoing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Board of Directors reports. Who would like to go first?
I'll go
Okay.
backwards, huh?
Yeah, go backwards.
So you got this, the governor's $5.1 billion proposed budget for infrastructure, drought. So there's $1.3 billion for drinking water and wastewater infrastructure, focused on small and disadvantaged communities, which Rough and Ready and Penn Valley are both designated disadvantaged. So I talked to the Penn Valley, presented at the Penn Valley MAC, which is Municipal Advisory Commission, and they support the Backbone Extension Program, and have asked Supervisor Susan Hook to take it to the Board of Supervisors, also to reach out to government, to other agencies for support. Then I talked to 3 other groups that are also supportive of the Backbone Extension Program. And tomorrow I actually go to Lake Wildwood and talk to them. There's 4 alternatives in the program. My idea, my gut response would be to try to do them all, because that rough and ready area is so prone to fire. Every year it seems to burn, and the people are on conjunctive water usage. I mean, they're using raw water for domestic use. It is a area that needs to have treated water.
We force them to take treated water if we put it to them?
Pardon me?
We force them to take treated water?
No.
No, we can't.
There's a joke, but I won't say it. But you can't lead anybody to do anything, but it's there. And as the wells go drier and drier, which they are, what are the options? It's not a reason to deny the project. And if we get state funding, it's a heck of a good project. Penn Valley is supportive. And this $1.3 billion seems to be just targeted for the small and disadvantaged communities, which those 2 communities are. So,
Who among our staff would do the deeper staff work dive to look into that and find out if or what components of that project will qualify for those monies? How does that happen?
That's a good question. In terms of the analysis of grant programs when they arrive and when they're set up, and who can spend time to look at the list of projects and how we report to them, it can be a number of different people.
Do we need a consultant?
Yeah.
Maybe we do.
At the end of the day, sometimes we do hire consultants for this.
No, well,
and to write these grant programs for us and to coordinate with us, because we just simply don't have.
Because in order to get money like this, you got to have somebody bird dogging it.
It's almost a full-time job.
I know.
We need commitments of people that are going to sign up. The feasibility study report for it, the problem statement is that the Lake Wildwood treatment plant is at the end of its useful life, but then it says there could accommodate 860 more households before it reaches the 3.6 gallons per day, 3.6 million gallons a day capacity of the existing plant. And so I don't know of 860 new dwelling units that are going to be scheduled out there. And we don't have anyone coming in. We're building excess capacity and redundancy when we don't know if there's going to be development there.
Well, can I just step back?
Wait,
There's a technical aspect to every project that we would have to propose, and if we were to build and apply for something, it would have to pass muster of technical feasibility. Your question, which is more of what I'm concerned about, is who do we have that can review, analyze, and bring some of this money to the district? And currently, we don't have the capacity in-house to do that. So that would be somebody, that would be an external consultant to help us sort of take a look at our projects, take a look at the suite of money that is out there, match up where our best fit happens. In regards to the Sierra Nevada Conservancy grant, NESA and her team really kind of take that burden on, and they have the capacity to do it. But when it comes to a pipeline,
like an infrastructure project,
those are different. That's out of their wheelhouse.
But I would think that there is somebody with Stantec or with.
There's consultants around that would be super willing and helpful to do us. It just costs money.
And also the county could help a little bit.
The county could help or could
Well,
give us a consultant, or we could do a joint thing. Maybe we go to the county and go,
maybe
hey,
there's joint
you got a
opportunities
staff person there that you can
There's always
devote some time.
And I think the MAC resolution mentioned that also.
Did it? It would be cool.
I have to go back and check it, but I think it did.
There's infrastructure upgrades too. I mean, that could include.
Well, right, I mean, there's
dam
lots of money.
facilities, Right? We're
Yeah.
looking at the Scotts Flat upgrade. There might be
Right,
facility.
and there's lots of money
infrastructure improvement there.
available, we just
know
need
that's gonna
someone
be
to
a
go
cost.
get it.
It's coming.
I think we should pursue, not just the backbone, but any project that we need that's on the list, the priority list that we, is in the heads of the people downstairs.
So,
No, I mean,
Not just in heads, there's a
well,
list.
but I mean,
There's a list.
Okay, there is
Yeah.
a list. I retract
Yeah.
that.
so anyway, I'm,
So you mentioned technical, aren't we already done? Isn't it a turnkey project, a backbone project?
I don't pretend to know the ins and outs of that. This,
Okay.
the backbone, I'm not gonna tell you. All I know is it's been approved by the board. We've moved this forward, and we were gonna bond for it. Now we've walked it back to fund it for the next 10 years over
Mhm.
budgetary processes.
Right.
And that's where it stands.
That's
It
where
is
it
a
stands.
project approved by the board. That's,
Yes.
that's where we're at.
Okay.
Well, I think we've sort of strayed off, but I think that getting a consultant in our sites to help us find some of this money for whatever project we can get.
I would agree.
it's a basket.
Yeah, there's a bucket of money here for all kinds of things
Let's go
that we
after it.
could benefit from.
So, I'll talk to Sue and see what the county can step in and do. Because they were looking how they could partner more with us.
Right.
So, to finish my report is, the rattlesnakes are out. And big time, and if you've never seen two rattlesnakes mating, you haven't lived.
Far away.
Okay,
Okay.
It was
With
up
that,
too close.
Director Heck will give her report. Very quickly, as I mentioned before, I had a meeting with Grass Valley City Council member, and we're working to forward this idea of bringing Grass Valley or the cities into our district. I think that's an important step.
Amen.
I also met with the Contractors Association last week and had a very good meeting with them, wide-ranging discussions, and we kind of honed in specifically on this issue of the developments that are on the drawing board here from the county that are being approved. The latest is Rincon del Rio, and the same issue. So I asked Greg to send out to everybody, oh, here's another big giant project that's been approved. We will be asked to make some sort of deal with our connection fees as we were asked for the Loma Rica Ranch project. So all I'm saying about that is we need to get that policy developed.
Yeah, and that's it legal now?
It is,
So-
oh, good.
Yeah, so we're going back and forth and seeing.
Okay, great.
Who drafted it?
Well, you mean the
Policy.
update?
The
Policy's there, we're just updating
Well, I
the
think
policy.
we gave some direction about
Yeah.
how we wanted to
Yeah, you
modify
guys
it.
gave direction, and so staff and legal are going back and forth on that.
Okay, and then lastly, just for everybody, and you'll hear this later, but we have been working diligently, Director Hull and I, and Greg and Jana and Marvin, on our labor committee. And we have been, how many meetings have we had, you guys? A lot in the last
You're having one to.
month. And, you know, and then we're gonna have, Karen and I are gonna have another one after this. So just to let you know, we're working hard on everybody's behalf, right, Karen?
Thank you.
Yes. And that's it for my report.
Okay, thank you, Director Heck. Director Peters.
Let's see. I'm sorry?
I guess we voted this already.
Oh, good, thank you. Yeah, so let's see, on May 17th, I attended the Rural Lincoln Municipal Advisory Council meeting. And on the 20th, I attended the Nevada County Public Meeting for the mitigated negative deck on the Dog Bar Bridge. It was a really good meeting. They were very receptive to ideas, and Nevada Irrigation District owns all the land in the whole area of that area. And there's a big, even though it's not sanctioned recreation, it's loud and clear in the comments on that, bridge comments, that it's a recreation area, and people are recreating on our land in that area. And so, but they're moving forward. They had, again, they had stalled as long as they could, because theoretically, this bridge is gonna be inundated should the Centennial go forward. And so there was some discussion of, well, how long, you know, in the future?
Yes, of course.
And they said they can't afford not to replace this bridge right now, because it is on its very last leg.
Yeah.
And that if NID does anything in the next 25 years, it will be economically a bad investment of public funds. But they're going forward anyway, because they have to just for safety purposes. So it's something that we should put on our radar, and as far as strategic planning, I think we really need, as was warranted by this, we need to incorporate environmental regulation into our strategic planning to figure out what are we going to do with these lands that we have, and how are we going to move forward going into the future and actively decide on what to do instead of reactive when it happens. It was a good meeting, and I'm glad I went.
Nora, am I correct that the county will lose the federal funding if they don't act now?
That's the bottom line.
That's the driver.
That is, yeah.
That's the total driver. They said that if you don't do something now, we have to take the money. And the bridge is not.
That's way sensitive,
It's really deteriorated. Yeah, and I went down there a few times, and every time I went there, there was cars all parked up the street and down the street, on the side, and there's people walking across the bridge, and cars are having to stop, and
So,
there's a lot of people out there. And I don't know if it's the COVID response where people are just getting out more,
all the above.
but it's a very high activity area.
So there's just as to update, recently, there's been a request from the county to bring that concept to the board, and they're looking to make sure that there's, I guess, 3 kind of parking spaces that are there now, parking spaces just off the side of the road.
Oh my gosh.
And this bridge will completely, remove those, so they have to mitigate those. And the request will come, I think we're gonna have probably in July, bring it to you for, just consideration for just making sure that there's those 3 or 4 parking spaces can be maintained on Eddie's property after the project is done.
Right.
So that's the current request in the county, and
How-
we're gonna bring that to you here shortly.
How'd that semi-truck get stuck? About 2 weeks ago, on the bridge.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. That it's so narrow.
It's the curve onto it.
And then, and over the Bear Canal, it's just, wow.
Have you been down there in a heavy storm?
Riding a bike?
It's sketchy.
Yeah, so it's something we need to keep on our radar. There's activity out there that we want to acknowledge. We need to start thinking about what we're going to be doing in that. That's it.
Thank you, Director Peters. Director Hull.
Well, I wrapped up my flower season and had a much better year than last year, where I was struck blind and down by COVID. So this year, events are starting to come back, and one of the nice things about being a flower farmer is that you're bringing the joy of nature's beauty to people, and that's a very rewarding part of the work. The other thing I just wanted to comment about, if you look at local agriculture, the preponderance of farms are my size, 1.5 acres, 2 acres. And so, although I don't represent certainly the experience of Rich and Chris in a larger operation, I do represent a very strong, I represent what the majority of agriculture is in our region in terms of size, scale, and kind of economic impact. It is of this size, not to diminish what you guys have done.
No, we farm small too.
Well, relatively speaking, yes, but you're still much bigger than the preponderance of farms in our area, right? Anyway.
I think a lot of our farms are less, 1 to 2 inches, minors inches.
I learned, I won't interrupt.
No, I'm wrapping it up so I can get back into.
To dovetail on that, when I started going to farm bureau meetings, and we had large farmers and little farmers there, and I was a little farmer relative to the state of California. A big farmer in Nevada County, but discovered that we all have the same needs, the same things in common, that there is no us against them.
Right.
In that, and so I don't want to come across that way when we're talking about those 1.5-inch customers versus the 21 and 50-inch customers. But anyway, that's it.
Yeah.
And you don't come across, neither of you come across that way. It's just that I think you have different challenges being very small in
Right,
your
right.
operation, because you don't have staff, you're doing everything yourself.
Yep.
And for a lot of farms, this isn't true of me, you know, the economic impact is more on a family level, you know? Anyway, it's just a real challenge to make ends meet as a small farmer, and I'm sure at your scale, it's not easy either.
I think that challenge runs across, from my experience, clear across the United States in agriculture. It's just a matter of scale, whether it's a small farm or large scale. That exists, right?
Yeah.
Because, anyway, thank you for that.
We should have a conversation about that
Yes.
in depth, you know, just,
Karen should come out to your farm.
sure.
We should have it at your farm.
We should have a meeting at your
We
farm.
should have a barbecue at your farm.
Yeah.
That's right.
Chris, you and Chris could.
Yeah.
So the tomatoes, Antonio's tomatoes be ready in about 10 days.
Oh, wow, okay.
And you can't believe how
Let's
good they
go.
are.
Let's
I'll
go.
be there.
Yeah, and just choose, you want chicken, steak, veggie, whatever you want. We'll barbecue it.
Right, director's report. Yes.
Okay. Back to director's
Okay,
report.
you're finished. I already commented on Karen's, I'm gonna comment on Laura's statement about, the strategic plan. It does, it spurs me on to talk about dispersed camping and this free-for-all recreation. If we're gonna be asked to build a parking lot down there, we can put in an Iron Ranger down there, right?
Yeah?
Yeah.
And then everybody will ignore.
What's that? Everybody will be for it,
No,
somebody has
I
to.
said ignore.
Oh, ignore, but,
Where you
that's,
take the ticket, you put your $5 in
Yeah.
and drop your little canister.
Yeah.
I never heard it called that.
Oh, yeah, Iron
No.
Ranger.
You haven't
Yeah.
experienced one up in the mountains?
I've experienced it, but I didn't know that's what you call
You
them.
put the receipt on your,
Yeah.
your car.
Do that. And then the cop goes around and he checks the dashes, and if they don't, they get a ticket.
Yeah.
Anyway, because the Bowman Lake is the big one in that category too.
the truth.
And I don't know, going forward, looking at those things, you know, cost benefit is always a big issue, right?
Yeah.
The rest of my report, I was the keynote speaker at the Nevada County Farm Bureau, Nevada County Republican Women's Lunch last week on Wednesday. And a big group of people, lots of water questions, lots of questions about, concern about drought, and are we going to build the Centennial Reservoir? So that was interesting time and very well received. On that's my report.
All right.
Moving things along faster than we were doing for a second. Okay. Next, we'll have public comment on the second item of closed session to be considered at this time. If there's any public comment on labor negotiations, that's where we're going to be. Start on your phone. Okay, seeing none, we will close the open session, open the closed session.
Did you make the announcement regarding closed session, board action?
No, should I do that?
Yes, that would be great, and the anticipated,
Okay.
board action for this item would be the same.
Yeah, so, reporting out from the previous closed session, direction was given to council. And, we expect direction to be given at this. No, nothing will be reported out in terms of action.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
all right, thank you. Open session is, we're closing the open session, opening the closed session.
This will close our Zoom for today.
And we'll close
And this would close our Zoom for today.
Thank you.